Harang is texting her friend, Dabin, about a heated moment that is happening right now. She is annoyed because she has been trying to study but their loud sounds piercing into her room are preventing her from doing so. Dabin seems more annoyed than she is, pointing out that things have been like this for her for 3 straight weeks. Because of the loud noises, Harang has been unable to focus on studying and her exam is fast approaching. Dabin feels like this guy has no regard for his neighbors and just then, it goes quiet. Harang gets curious, leaning against the wall to listen in, hoping she could hear why it went quiet all of a sudden. She manages to hear something that makes her feel flustered. She is still thinking about what she heard when Dabin sends her a DM. The notification sound startles her, so she tosses her phone out of shock. Just then, a woman walks into the room and informs her that she brought her some snacks. Her entry only startles Harang the more and she notices this. The woman asks Harang why she is being jumpy, seeking to know if she is looking at something weird again. Harang, understanding how things are looking, pretends to be on a phone call and the caller yelled into the phone and startled her. The woman doesn't buy the act, accusing Harang of reading boys' love comics again. Harang then furthers her lie, claiming she is on the phone with her friend Dabin. It doesn't look like her mom is buying the act, but before she can say more, Harang rushes to the door and tells her that she is going out to talk to Dabin on the phone for a while. The woman turns out to be Harang's mother, and even though she knows Harang is lying, she permits her to go for 30 minutes. As soon as she leaves the room, her mother sighs deeply, confessing that she does not see how Harang will ever get her law degree when she seems so distracted. Meanwhile, Harang, who has just escaped, leans on her door, relieved that she has just dodged a bullet. She knows that if her mom found out that she was eavesdropping on what the guy next door was doing, she would have been scolded severely. She is getting goosebumps just thinking about what would have happened if her mom busted her when she gets another DM from Dabin. Dabin wishes to have a chat with Harang's noisy neighbor, but Harang assures her she does not need to worry. She texts Dabin that she will try to ignore the noise. After sending the message, she goes back to enjoying her day, only to be bothered by insects that she feels are noisier than her neighbors. Harang decides to ignore their buzzing and enjoy her day since it's been a while since she had such a clear day. During her time outside, Dabin thinks about the sounds that come from her neighbor's house. She admits to herself that the sounds truly are not loud, however, it is she who can't stop eavesdropping on what is happening next door. She thinks about this, the more she leans against the balcony, until she notices her neighbor come out of his house. 'Cause of him, Harang loses concentration and slips. Just as she is about to fall to her doom, she is saved by her neighbor. The near-fall experience scared Harang half to death, but even upon that, her focus is now on the chest of her neighbor who has her in his arms. When he notices that she has lingered in his arms, he asks her if she can stand on her own. Immediately, Harang gets off and apologizes to him for the delay. She then thanks her neighbor for saving her life, but still has her mind on his physique. He had always had baggy shirts on which hid how ripped he was, and now she understands why he keeps getting all that heated action. She stares at her neighbor until he feels like she wants to say something to him, when suddenly a guy pops out from her neighbor's place. The guy is clearly unclad and asks Harang's neighbor when he is coming back inside. Harang is shocked to the core when she finds out it's a guy. While Harang's neighbor calmly discusses with his love interest, Harang just finds it hard to believe that he goes guys too. He maintains his cold persona and instructs Harang to go in since it's cold. He notices that she isn't listening and doesn't get why, unaware of the fact that she is trying to take a call. On taking the call, before Harang can say anything, Dabin loudly demands to know why Harang isn't texting back. She suspects that Harang went over to her neighbor's place by herself. Dabin is so loud that Harang's neighbor hears them talking about him. A clearly embarrassed Harang tries to quiet Dabin down before she embarrasses her even more. She does this by claiming she doesn't know what Dabin is talking about, but her attempts to silence Dabin fail. Instead, Dabin gets even louder, reminding Harang that she had called her neighbor a pervert who slept around with different people daily. This echoes throughout the hallway, so it's clear the neighbor heard what Harang said about him. After that day, 3 days passed by and each day Harang snuck into her own home. On the 4th day, she was thinking about how she felt like she was shooting a spy movie, when her neighbor suddenly came out. She was surprised to see him, and once their eyes met, an awkward silence filled the hallway. Noticing how awkward things are, Harang decides to greet her neighbor. To her surprise, he ignores her and just pulls out a stick of cigarette and gets to puffing. Harang, on the other hand, feels embarrassed and sad that this man wouldn't say hello back to her once. Since he ignored her, she decided to do the same and head to school. Days went by and the day for Harang's law school exam results to be released finally came. It was an extremely rainy day, so much so that Harang felt like the cold pierced through the walls of her apartment. On this day, when Harang hides in a playground close to her house, her neighbor approaches her. He comes to her in the downpour and gives her the most memorable day of her life. A few hours before Harang's neighbor approaches her, she sits under a slide to shade her from the downpour a bit. She reaches out to see if the rain has gone down a bit, but discovers that it hasn't, since it's dropping so hard it causes her hand to hurt. While sitting there, she wonders if her mom is hurting like her, taking her mind back to when she told her mom about her bar result. While desperately holding Harang's hand, her mother reminded her that she had graduated with honors from Korea National University. Her mother then tried to encourage her by assuring her that she shouldn't be disappointed for failing the exam. She declared that all she wanted from Harang was for Harang to graduate from the university's law school and pursue a career as a prosecutor. That was all Harang's mother claimed she wanted from her, and when Harang heard this, she got even more hurt. For some reason, she felt her mother saw her as a replacement for her son who passed away. When she brought up this point, her mother was confused, but Harang didn't stop there. With tear-filled eyes, she accused her mother of wanting her to spend all her life living the life her brother would have lived. This was a very sensitive topic, so it left Harang's mother stunned and unable to follow after Harang as Harang rudely walked out on her. On getting outside, Harang spots her noisy neighbor casually having a smoke while watching the rain. The second their eyes met, she tried to dry her eyes, knowing fully well that that guy was the last person she wanted to see her that way. She immediately felt embarrassed, and for the first time in a long while, her neighbor tried to speak with her. Hearing his voice only caused her to feel more hurt and run off. She kept running to nowhere in particular until she got to the playground and stopped to catch her breath. That brief moment of rest made Harang realize she was cold, so she took cover under a slide. She then noticed that her cold was caused by her being drenched from the rain. She also noticed her eyes had become puffy because of the crying. It was under the slide she reminisced on what led to her being there, but then a shadow was cast on her, disrupting her thoughts. Harang looks up to see the shadow was caused by her neighbor, who looks down at her with that emotionless look on his face. Harang's tears begin to resurface, so she claims that her reason for running off is because he startled her. Since he says nothing to her and her tears are so obvious, Harang lets them fall and permits her neighbor to stop standing silently and laugh at her all he wants. Even so, her neighbor remains silent and just places his umbrella above Harang to shield her from the rain and walks away. His act of kindness surprises Harang, to the point that she is stunned for a bit. Nevertheless, she picks up the umbrella and follows her neighbor back to their apartment complex. He then leaves her at her door and walks into his home, ignoring her when she asks him to wait. Harang freezes for a second, not knowing whether to go into his house and give him back his umbrella or not. She concludes that it's not cool to walk into a stranger's house. However, as she turns away to leave, her neighbor tells her that if she isn't coming in, she should close the door. Harang sees this as an invitation, plus she has always been curious about this guy, so she doesn't hesitate to walk into his house. When she walks in, he is drying himself and expresses how shocked he is that she came in, since he didn't expect her to. He can't help but observe how soaked she is, as she tells him that she came in because she had to return his umbrella. She also explains that she cannot go home right now and asks him to lend her a towel so she can dry herself. He had gotten a bit distracted by Harang's soaked frame, so he sighs deeply and tosses his towel at her. Harang, on the other hand, doesn't understand why her neighbor reacted that way. He decides to go in for a bit and assures Harang that she can sit in the living room since he doesn't care if it gets wet. Harang does as he asks, heading to the living room to sit while thinking about how she didn't expect his place to look so ordinary. When she gets to the living room, she realizes that his place isn't that ordinary because of the many bottles she sees lying around. It's a mess, and she wonders when the last time this guy did his laundry was, since his clothes look so stiff. For some time, Harang recalls that she does not live there, so she shouldn't be so judgmental. Harang does not feel comfortable at all because of how soaked she is, but finally finds a comfortable spot to sit. Suddenly, she stumbles upon a card which she picks up and decides to observe. She notices that the card looks familiar, so it doesn't take her too long to figure out that it's a student identity card from Korea National University. It says the card belongs to Harang's neighbor, and it says he went to med school at her university. She didn't know that because they were in different departments. She doesn't understand why he would leave his student ID lying around. Because of how he treats the ID, Harang now feels like graduating from KNU isn't that big of a deal. From the ID card, we also get to know that her neighbor's name is Hyo Jae-woo. Suddenly, she feels like she is forgetting something important. In the end, she tells herself that it's nothing. When Jae-woo is done, he instructs Harang to go take a shower because he can't have her catching a cold in his house. Jae-woo also roughly tosses her a change of clothes, so she goes on to get changed. While she is at it, she thinks about how Jae-woo is behaving and is pissed because she cannot tell if he is being nice or a complete jerk. Later on in the bathroom, Harang finally gets to view herself and notices that all this time she wasn't wearing a bra. Since her clothes are now next to transparent, she screams in silence because she knows Jae-woo must have seen enough by now. However, Jae-woo is oblivious to her acting out, going about his business as usual. Harang, on the other hand, now understands the important detail that skipped her mind. 'Cause Jae-woo didn't say anything all this time, Harang sees him as nothing but a pervert creep. She scolds herself for willingly walking into a minefield. Now she feels like Jae-woo might have interest in her, but believes that if she keeps her head straight she won't get into any trouble. Well, that's easier said than done, so Harang knows she has to do more than that. She promises herself that she's going to stay cautious and avoid eye contact for as long as possible. With this conviction, Harang walks out of the shower to the living room where Jae-woo currently is watching a movie. She feels things are awkward right now and reaches for a beer with the hopes that it'll make things feel less awkward. In the process of getting the beer, she accidentally reveals a piece of her feminine qualities to him, causing him to choke. As he chokes, Harang, unconscious of what she had just done, wonders what was wrong with him. Nevertheless, she ignores him, reminding herself that all she has to do is keep a clear head. A few beers after, the clear head idea is out the window and Harang is staring at Jae-woo like she is tipsy. Jae-woo can tell she is totally out of it and notices she is this way because she has had one too many beers. To prevent her from getting even more tipsy, Jae-woo takes Harang's beer from her, stating that she has had enough to drink. He tells her that he will get her blankets for her to lie down, but before he knows it, she is on top of him, blaming him partly for her flunking her exam. This is an exam Jae-woo doesn't even know about. Jae-woo demands to know what exam Harang is talking about and what he did, while wondering why she is acting crazy. He tells her to get off him, but Harang stays defiant, questioning Jae-woo about his lifestyle. She wants to know if the way he lives his life is fun or exciting. If it is, she wishes that he would show her how to live like him. Jae-woo still doesn't understand what exactly Harang is saying, so she decides to explain it to him. Harang tells him that she knows he lives carefreely, sleeping around daily, and this comment seems to annoy him. Before she knows it, the tables literally turn and Jae-woo is now the one on top. He admits he doesn't know what Harang is thinking about, but rebukes her for saying rash things about him when she doesn't know him. Still, with his composed look, he tells Harang that he has no reason to sit there and listen to her judge him, no matter what he does. He adds that if Harang is disappointed with her life, she should do whatever she wants, as no one is forcing her to live the way she does. His tone starts making Harang feel uneasy, but that doesn't stop her from lashing out. She then slams Jaewoo's chest while accusing him of not knowing anything because he does what he wants all the time. Jaewoo returns, asking Harang to look around and tell him if his place looks like the home of someone who is content and living life on their own terms. The awkwardness keeps growing, with neither party saying a word until Jaewoo breaks. He brings back Harang's earlier request for him to show her what he enjoys in his lifestyle and offers to show it to her. With this in mind, he leans in for a kiss that Harang braces herself for but stops midway due to a change of heart. This change of heart is what prompts him to tell Harang to leave, scolding himself for thinking of doing anything with someone like Harang. He pulls away from Harang, but then she grabs onto his shirt, pulling him back to her. He is surprised by this move, but before he can do anything, Harang breaks down. She complains that she is the only one who has to live the way she does. Till he doesn't understand what she is talking about and urges her to let go of him, but she refuses, demanding to know why he stopped. She demands to know why Jaewoo would get down and dirty with anyone of any age and gender but her. Jaewoo maintains that he doesn't know what Harang is talking about and orders her to let go of him. Harang starts crying again, claiming that Jaewoo feels sorry for her, which is why he is refusing her. She accepts that he isn't good enough for him. She's a lousy daughter and is not as attractive as other girls, but she still wants this. Her whining annoys Jaewoo more, to the point that he claims she is driving him nuts. Harang keeps complaining when Jaewoo tells her that she is fine as she is. To him, she is good enough, so he begs her to stop crying and let go of his shirt. Hearing this makes Harang feel a lot better. She then asks Jaewoo if he wants to have a heated moment with her. He thought he had already handled this, nevertheless, just so she would feel better. He agrees that he does, but not today. Jaewoo refusing Harang only makes her feel bad again, accusing him of lying and not wanting to get intimate with her. Jaewoo decides to try and convince Harang that he does not want her to do something she'll regret, but ends up agreeing to get intimate with her just so she would be happy. He warns her that she shouldn't come crying to him afterwards and takes off his shirt. Again, he makes it clear to Harang that he is giving her all these warnings because he feels she is misunderstanding the situation. He has told her no countless times and practiced restraint as best as he could, but goes on to give Harang the intimacy she desires. By the time they are done, it's already too late, so Harang has to spend the night at Jaewoo's place. In the morning, Jaewoo sees her off. At his door, Harang tells him that she will wash his clothes and return to him, but he refuses. Instead, he tells her that whether she keeps them or throws them away is up to her. Since she can tell he has no interest in the clothes, Harang says she will do whatever she wants with them. She is about to thank him for letting her spend the night at his place when she hears her mother call out to her. Her mother is shocked and asks her why she is coming out of their neighbor's apartment. Harang immediately tries to explain herself, but her mother doesn't let her, reminding her that she claimed she was going to be spending the night at Dabin's place. The situation is already bad as it is, so to prevent it from getting worse, Harang hides her clothes before her mother can see them. Her mother, still very furious, asks Harang if she has finally lost her mind. All this time, Jaewoo just watches the mother and daughter, until Harang's mother tries to reel him into it. She does this by asking him who he is and why he was spending the night with Harang. To prevent this from getting too far, Harang steps in, pleading with her mother to hear her out because she is getting it all wrong. As soon as her mother lets her explain, Harang tells her that he was sitting alone in the rain when he came and helped her out. Harang's explanation prompts her mother to ask Jaewoo why he took her to his place when her house is just by his. She demands to know if he did that because he is dating Harang, and he affirms that they are dating. The confession causes a wave of disturbing silence to pass by the hallway, leaving Harang in disbelief and her mother in shock since they just moved into the apartment. It's obvious that Harang didn't expect such a response from Jaewoo, but she still thinks fast, claiming that they knew each other from school. She adds that even though they didn't major in the same field, Jaewoo is still her boyfriend. Harang's mother can't believe that this man, who looks like he hasn't shaved his beard or hair in a while and is wearing shorts with so many holes, went to Korea National University. Harang tries to make Jae-woo sound even better, informing her mother that Jae-woo even went to med school, a shocker that even she did not expect. With that, Harang's mother decides to believe her and gives Jae-woo a brief warning to send her home the next time something happens. She points out that even if they are dating, she is not okay with her daughter spending the night at her boyfriend's place this early on. Jae-woo claims to understand and apologizes to Harang's mother. His apology seems to have calmed all underlying tensions. Nevertheless, to take her mom's attention off Jae-woo for the time being, Harang offers to help her mother with the trash bag she has in hand. As they both leave to take out the trash, Harang's mother assures her they will continue their discussion at home when they get back. Meanwhile, Harang isn't even paying attention to her. Her attention is more on Jae-woo, who she whispers a promise she will pay back later. Jae-woo whispers back that she doesn't have to worry about that and just get lost. As soon as Harang and her mother leave, Jae-woo pulls out his pack of cigarettes to have a smoke. As he does so, he observes the weather. He believes it's nice today because a storm just passed. He also promises himself that he will never bring home strays again. He may have dodged a bullet back there, but Harang hasn't, and she knows that, so she starts apologizing once they get home. At the moment, her mother is giving her the silent treatment, so she feels her mother is going to smack some sense into her and braces herself for it. To her surprise, her mother doesn't have that in mind but wants to talk instead. She tells Harang that when she ran out into the rain the way she did yesterday and wasn't answering her phone, she got worried. Out of worry, her mother says she went out after her, running around the neighborhood like a crazy person. She adds that she was worried Harang had gotten into an accident, and Harang apologizes to her. Harang explains that she was planning to spend the night at Dabin's, just like she texted her, but the rain started pouring even more heavily. Hearing this pisses Harang's mother off the more, but as she tries to scold her more, she recalls what happened yesterday. Before Harang ran off, she accused her mother of wanting her to spend her life living the life her late brother would have lived. Remembering this makes Harang's mother calm down and adjourn their discussion. She instructs Harang to go to her room and change, and also informs her of the soy-marinated crab she likes, that her father went out and got for her. Harang is elated to hear this, celebrating as she goes to her room before she collapses on her bed when she gets there. On her bed, Harang recalls how she was caught by her mother just as she was coming out of Jae-woo's house. She also remembers that Jae-woo said they were dating, a lie he told without even batting an eye. She recalls something that happened last night after their intimate moment. In the middle of the night, she woke up to see Jae-woo was awake, drinking milk. Generously, he handed her the carton of milk, but before she took a sip, she asked Jae-woo if they were now in a relationship. Jae-woo was so shocked by the question that he spat out milk. To make sure he didn't have problems in future, he explained to Harang that just because they got intimate didn't mean they were dating. Harang reluctantly agreed and claimed she was relieved since she'd rather not date someone like him, and he felt the same about her. Harang then told him that she expected her first time to be calmer, but blamed herself for making out with an inconsiderate person. From all that, the only thing Jae-woo picked was that was Harang's first time. He was shocked to hear this, but Harang assured him he didn't have to worry, since she was not the type to cling to someone because he was her first. Jae-woo dropped his head in panic before demanding to know how old Harang was. She didn't notice his first reaction, but saw the way he reacted after she told him her age and argued that she wouldn't act clingy. She called Jae-woo Mr. and told him that she couldn't care less if he was way older than her or not, and assured him that he didn't need to worry about her. All Jae-woo did after hearing that was stress on how Harang called him Mr. Harang suspected that since that bothered him, he was truly a lot older than her. Jae-woo, who had always been cool, actually got offended, which was strange. Still, Harang paid no attention to Jae-woo. She left the room and walked into another where her mother was. At this point, it became clear that something was odd, especially as her mother asked her if she slept with the pervert Jae-woo after failing her law exam. It got more suspicious when Harang tried to explain to her mother that it wasn't what it looked like. Her mother didn't listen to her and warned her not to attempt denying it as she could hear what was happening through the wall. Suddenly, Harang's mother yelled her name at the top of her voice, startling her back to consciousness. Turns out all that was a dream Harang was having, which was a mix of memory and guilt. With the way Harang reacted after her mother called her mother asks her if she is okay. She then asks her if she had a nightmare, but Harang claims she didn't. She is still recovering from the shock of the dream she just had, when she notices her mother has something in hand and asks what it is. It's a crab, and Harang's mother, to Harang's surprise, tells her to take it next door. Harang goes over to Jaewoo's place to deliver the crab, but finds it hard to knock on his door. She didn't want to see him ever again, but her mother wanted her to do this as her way of apologizing to Jaewoo for being harsh to him. Still, Harang doesn't see why she has to apologize to him, before recalling that he lied to her. Nevertheless, she believes that giving him crab for that is doing too much. Now she has a reason to give him the crab, so she wonders what she should say to him. She can't tell whether she should thank Jaewoo for being a good liar or tell him that she was deeply moved by how good his acting was. She just can't come up with the words to use and bumps her head against the door out of frustration. Unluckily for her, it sounds like she knocked and Jaewoo asks who it is. Immediately, Harang panics, not knowing what to say. Finally, she decides to take the coward's way out, abandon the crab at Jaewoo's door and make a run for it. She is doing this, but makes a mistake that delays her escape. Suddenly, the door opens and tiny legs appear. Harang looks up to see who these legs belong to and spots a little girl. The little girl, however, is surprised to see Harang and asks Harang who she is. Instead of answering that, Harang returns the question, so the girl calls out to her father and tells him there is a lady at the door. The little girl's name is Shin-sol, and her father tells her that he had warned her not to be opening the door for people she didn't know. The girl's father is none other than Jaewoo, who is all dressed up in an apron and is surprised to see Harang. Harang is surprised even more, as Shin-sol calls Jaewoo dad. Later on, Harang and Jaewoo are seated at his dining table for him to explain what's going on. Harang disappointedly tells him that she didn't know he was off the market. This is a statement he and his daughter Shin-sol don't even understand, which is why she asks what market Harang is talking about. To prevent her from invading their conversations again, to orders Shin-sol to go to her room and play. She isn't happy with this, but when she is out of the way, Jaewoo asks Harang if she has lost her mind. Maybe she has, because instead of keeping quiet, she keeps talking about how Jaewoo has committed adultery with her and does other shady stuff. Jaewoo demands to know what crazy stuff Harang is talking about, accusing her of assuming the worst about him again. What she said gets him thinking for a bit, and when he is done, he walks over to Harang, grabs her hand and leads her to a room. He drops her on some poorly made bed when she complains that there is a child in the house. Jaewoo doesn't respond to her reason. He just gets close to her and promises he won't give her the full body treatment for free. It's unclear what happens next, but the sounds Harang is making attract young Shin-sol to the room. She peeps at first, before getting angry and angrily slams the door open, accusing her dad of acting unfairly. She also tells him that she wants to play doctor as well, and with that emotionless look on his face, he reminds her that he told her to play in her room. He then returns his attention to Harang and asks her if she understands why she hears those sounds. All this time he was a regular masseur, and it was the sound she made during her massage that made her understand that she was wrong about him. Sure, the adults are okay and an embarrassed Harang should get going, but Shin-sol keeps fussing about wanting to play doctor. Eventually, Jaewoo agrees that they will play doctor and tells their new patient Harang to be good and lie back down. He looks like he is enjoying this, but Harang isn't. Meanwhile, Shin-sol is elated, rushing to go get her stuff in return. Harang, who is supposed to be their patient, asks Jaewoo if they are really going to play doctor. He tells her they are and urges her to see this as payback for all the condescending looks she gave him. A few minutes later, Harang lies down, waiting to be handled by the father and daughter. Jaewoo acts like he is a surgeon while Shin-sol acts as his assistant. Harang did not think the pair would take this so seriously, but gets a big shocker when Jae-woo announces that they are about to start an ocular surgery on her. Harang is not comfortable with this at all but lets the father and daughter do their thing. When they are done, they announce to Harang that she has lost her eyesight and apologize to her for it. Harang panics, not getting up because they are still playing, but she screams loudly, questioning the efficiency of the play hospital. When they are finally done, Jae-woo takes off Harang's blindfold and tells her that she can leave now since they are done. As he leaves, she asks him if he is really married. Instead of answering that, he throws Harang a question of his own, seeking to know how she knew he went to med school at KNU. She explains that she didn't mean to find him out but found out because she found his student ID. Because she answered his question, he decides to answer hers with another question, asking her to access him and tell him if he looks like he is married. To Harang, since Shin-sol is actually Jae-woo's daughter, it means he is married, so he decides to nonchalantly tell her to believe what she wants. He adds that this is okay because Harang has a talent for making judgments and assumptions about people. Normally Harang would let Jae-woo leave after giving a haphazard answer, but this time she refuses to let this slide. She demands that he give her a straightforward answer since people might think he cheated on his wife with her. Jae-woo replies that Harang does not have to worry about that since no one will see it that way, so she assumes Jae-woo is divorced. He goes quiet all of a sudden, making Harang wonder if she messed up by talking about Jae-woo's wife and she has passed away. Harang can tell she has gone too far, so she apologizes to Jae-woo for prying. He tells her it's no big deal and is leaving his massage room while Harang smacks herself for always talking without thinking. When Jae-woo opens the massage room's door fully to leave, Shin-sol is at the door, pointing his phone at him as she tells him her mom wants to talk to him, so he takes the phone from her. The first thing Shin-sol's mom tells Jae-woo, however, is that he is crazy and Harang agrees with her. We don't get to know what Jae-woo and Shin-sol's mom talk about but just get a boost to some days after when Harang is at the library. Instead of reading, she is dozing when her friend Kang Dabin comes to wake her up. Although she complains that he startled her, he invites her to come outside so she can get some fresh air and wake up. Outside, she filled Dabin in on what's been happening and told him about Jae-woo's marital status. Dabin is shocked to hear that Jae-woo is married and exclaims in shock when Harang tries to quiet him down. He scolds Harang for how she behaved, warning her that she can't just go off the deep end because she failed an exam. She assures Dabin that she only found out the guy was married and had a daughter after the deed was done. She narrates to Dabin how Jae-woo's wife called and started yelling at him over the phone, so she felt uncomfortable and ran out before she could hear anything. Her confession gets Dabin thinking seriously, to the point that he asks her what the punishment for adultery is. Luckily for her, adultery is no longer illegal as they scrapped that law long ago. Even if it was a law, Harang explains that the second party would be punished for it only if they knew the marital status of the other person. Dabin believes that Jae-woo's marital status has simplified things for Harang, so she should steer clear of sleeping with Harang again. She agrees with him but for some reason doesn't look too happy about it, so Dabin questions her on why she looks so disappointed. Harang denies that she is disappointed, claiming that she cannot have anything to do with Jae-woo again, since she does not know how old he is. Dabin finds this strange since last he checked, Harang was into older men. This pisses Harang off, causing her to throw a fit about how her interest in older people only counts for fictional characters and not older people. To her, those are two different things, and she goes on to preach about the difference between loving a 2D character and real-life people. Dabin decides to let Harang win this one, apologizing to her for asking before seeking to know what happened between her and her mom. Harang just tells Dabin that she and her mother had a big fight and reconciled and there is nothing more to it. From her cold response, he feels like Harang is not okay and asks if she isn't just pretending things are okay. Harang makes it clear that she doesn't want to talk about this now and wants to focus on getting ready for her law school exam again. From Dabin's point of view, Harang's mother should be content with Harang having graduated at the top of her class in KNU and stop putting pressure on her to go to KNU Law School. He believes that if Harang's goal is to become a prosecutor, it should not matter the law school she goes to. Nevertheless, Harang says that's just how it is on her mother's side of the family. Dabin knows Harang is talking about her uncles. One is a superintendent and the other is a judge, and I bet they all went to KNU. Dabin believes that Harang's uncles are different from her, which is more reason why she shouldn't be holding up to their standards. He even states that Harang's mother isn't really a big shot, so her expecting so much from Harang is unfair. Dabin had a point, but he missed something that Harang corrects. She is not being compared to her uncles but to her brother. She knows if it was her brother, he would have achieved way more than her uncles by now, but Dabin feels she can't be too sure about that. Harang agrees, but adds that they will never know her brother's true potential, which is why she is being pushed so hard. All the pushing only makes Harang feel like she is trying to catch up with a ghost she will never catch up to. Dabin decides to joke about it, stating that no one can catch up to a ghost because of how fast they move, but Harang doesn't find it funny. I mean, they are talking about her brother after all. To calm Harang down, Dabin gives her a lengthy explanation of the Earth and its rotation around the sun. He concludes that ghosts living on Earth must be overpowered since gravity does not apply to them, and finally gets Harang laughing. Dabin's mission to cheer Harang up is accomplished because it's easy for him to make her laugh, and he finishes things off by offering to buy lunch. Harang sits up happily, suggesting that they have beef or lamb, but Dabin suggests they get pork, which is the healthiest option. Harang refuses, however, claiming she is in the mood for something unhealthy. As she and Dabin leave, we see some suspicious-looking guy in the corner having a smoke. Once they are out of sight, the guy gets up and follows them, which is actually very strange. After lunch, Dabin and Harang head back, and Harang thanks Dabin for lunch. Suddenly, she starts talking about how she wants Dabin to get a house soon, and he ignores her, although he doesn't stop her from imagining. Harang is busy imagining, until she sees someone with sky-blue hair that looks familiar. Finally, she realizes that it's Sol, Jaewoo's daughter. Dabin doesn't know who Sol is, but Harang is too focused on the shady man Sol is with, to give Dabin an explanation. As they lead Sol to a vehicle with tinted windows, Harang runs across the road, throwing insults at the man, surprising Dabin. Harang is so focused on getting to Sol that she runs carelessly across the road, almost getting hit by a car if not for Dabin. When she gets close enough, she yells out Sol's name, then stands in between Sol and the shady man, demanding to know who he is. She also accuses the man of trying to kidnap Sol in broad daylight and asks Sol if she knows the man. Sol shakes her head in denial, prompting Harang to tell the man that an attempt to kidnap a minor will earn him a prison sentence of up to 10 years. She warns the man that if he attempts anything funny, she will not hesitate to call the cops. The man, while looking frustrated, tries to explain that although he looks suspicious, he is not a bad guy. Unfortunately for him, it looks like he is getting close to Harang, so Dabin steps in, grabbing the man's hand to prevent him from making any sudden moves. Dabin promises the shady-looking man that if he attempts to lay a hand on the girls, he will break his hand. The shady man sees Dabin's threats as a bluff nonetheless. Harang, seeing that things are getting heated, begins to assess their situation. She observes that on the shady man's side, he has himself, a man with sporting glasses, and one more person waiting in the car. On their side, they have Luck, the gathering crowd, and Dabin, making Harang feel like they stand a chance, but that doesn't stop her from dialing 911. Crowd has already started talking, which may be why the shady man backs off, apologizing for scaring Harang and the others. He takes some steps back and assures the gang that he will not come closer so they don't need to try and stop him. He also claims he wasn't attempting to kidnap Sol and he didn't need to do that. Harang then demands to know why the man was trying to take Sol with him. She even threatens to call the authorities if the man does not give her a straightforward answer. The shady guy can tell Harang is serious and tells her that he is Sol's father. On hearing this, Harang takes her thumb off the call button. The shady man boldly claims Sol as his daughter and looks down at her with a warm smile on his face, but Sol hides behind Harang even more. Dabin and Harang don't buy the shady guy's claim at first, But when Harang compares the guy's hair and Soul, she can see they match. Again, she asks Soul if she knows the guy or not, and she repeats that she doesn't. The shady guy claims to feel hurt by Soul's response, but Harang argues that he should stop acting since Soul says she doesn't know him. The longer they stand there, the more people get attracted, and when Soul's acclaimed father notices this, he decides to leave for now. Till, before leaving, tells Soul not to forget to say hi the next time they meet. He also drops his complimentary card in Harang's pocket, assuring her he will see her next time. Harang agrees, so they leave. Harang responds boldly, asking the man if he has a death wish, but that just makes the shady guy see her as feisty and charming. When the man finally leaves, Harang checks on Soul to see if she is okay, and fortunately, she is. The onlookers, however, start talking about what just happened, causing Soul to start crying, so Dabin picks Soul up and suggests they get away from the crowd. Later on, Harang and Dabin are far away from the crowd, discussing the third man in the car when Soul spots Jae-woo and calls out to him. He is surprised when he hears her voice, but before he knows it, she runs into his arms. Jae-woo, still maintaining his calm, collected persona, picks Soul up and asks what's going on. Dabin, on seeing Jae-woo, remembers everything Harang said about him and wonders if they can really trust this guy to be Soul's father. She feels they can't believe what anyone says in such a messy situation. Harang tells Dabin to head home, assuring him he doesn't have to worry, and promises to text him later. Dabin asks Harang to call him if anything happens, which she assures him she'll do. She then whispers to Jae-woo that they need to talk, so they should go, and they do. When they get to Jae-woo's place, he puts Soul to bed and goes out to talk with Harang. He asks her to tell him everything that happened, but instead she asks him if Soul is really his daughter. He asks her what she means by that question, so she explains that she wants to know if he is Soul's biological father. Jae-woo hesitates at first, but then affirms that he is Soul's father and wants to know why he asked. Harang also hesitates at first, but then tells Jae-woo everything that happened. Because of this news, Jae-woo makes a phone call and spends a long time on it. He talks with the person on the phone about the person he feels pulled the stunt and scolds the caller for not dropping and picking Soul up from school. Meanwhile, Harang is out there observing the card that was slipped into her pocket. She assumed it was a business card, but it turned out to be a card with the name Victoria. She doesn't know if Victoria is the name of a company or person, wondering what kind of business card hardly has anything written on it. As she does this, Jae-woo is trying to calm the caller down and urges the caller to hurry over and pick Soul because Soul is scared. Harang, unaware that Jae-woo has ended his call, observes the card, wondering if some sort of hidden message or hologram will pop up. Jae-woo notices Harang is looking at something and asks her what it is, but she immediately hides the card, claiming she isn't looking at anything. He keeps staring at her, hoping that she'll spill, but she doesn't, before apologizing to her and thanking her. Harang assures Jae-woo that he does not need to thank her, noticing his hand on her shoulder and how he didn't hesitate to make contact with her. She suspects he's trying something, but as he keeps thanking her and touching her even more, she can see that he is just treating her like a child. When she finally had enough, she swats his hand off her head, ordering him to stop. Suddenly there is banging on the door, so Jae-woo goes to see who it is, warning the person not to break the wall down. The banging ended up waking Soul, who came out to see the one knocking was her mom. Hearing Soul call the person mom causes Harang to panic. She believes she should not be here. The mother and daughter bind, unaware of Harang's presence. Jae-woo then asks Soul's mom, Lee Jungja, why she is wearing a costume, wondering if she rushed here between takes. Instead of answering, Jungja scolds Jae-woo for calling her by her real name when she warned him not to do so. She doesn't dwell on this topic, however, since she is more interested in the person who saved Soul. Jae-woo tells her Soul is inside, but when he checks, she isn't there, prompting him to go look for her. When he finally finds her, she is hiding, but he doesn't understand and asks her what she is doing there. She's been spotted. Still, she shushes Jae-woo, trying to tell him to act like she isn't there. Harang really feels like she shouldn't be here and sees Jae-woo as crazy for wanting to introduce her to his wife. All her whispering, however, is in vain, since Jaewoo can't understand a word she is saying and asks her to speak more clearly. By this time, Sol's mother has already spotted her and runs to Harang to thank her, concluding she was the one who saved her baby girl. Doesn't look like Harang is in any trouble, but she feels like she is. Maybe it's because she feels guilty about what happened between her and Jaewoo. Jungja, now 32 and known by her stage name Lee Byul, reveals on a variety show that she was raised by her grandmother. This unexpected confession contrasts with her exotic looks and gains her unexpected fame. Her kindness towards even junior staff members earns her the nickname the nation's granddaughter. Despite her radiant and innocent image, she carries a heavy secret, her daughter, Shin Sol, hidden from the public. Fans sense a shadow over her but feel powerless to help. While she remains resilient in the industry, her vulnerability lies in protecting her child from the harsh glare of fame. As Harang waves goodbye to Sol and her mom, she wonders if Sol knowing her mother is a famous actress is really okay. Jaewoo doesn't think it's a big deal but jokingly asks if Harang plans to sell the story to the tabloids. She quips, "Maybe if they pay me enough," but quickly assures him she's kidding. He tells her to go inside, offering her a drink, which she accepts. Then he asks her to keep Jungja's situation private, adding that he's sure she understands why. She reassures him, reminding him she was just joking earlier. Before she leaves, Jaewoo asks her to let him know if she ever runs into the sketchy guy from earlier. She tries to dig into his connection with the man, but he apologizes, saying he can't explain. She shrugs it off, promising to contact him if anything comes up. He offers to grant her a favor, joking that it includes anything Sol's mom can do for her. She recalls Jungja complimenting her beauty and offering to repay her kindness but saying she's a bit tied up for now. Jungja had told her to let Jaewoo know and she trusts that he'll handle it. She notes that celebrities really have that special spark, then teases him by calling him her buddy and joking that they seem like a married couple. He asks if it really looks like they're married and she fires back by asking if she's his ex-wife. He laughs and wonders how she ever planned to become a prosecutor with such wild guesses. She points out their completely different hair colors and says they look too different to be related, but she can't shake the fact that he claims Sol is his biological daughter. She asks if Sol has another mother and he smirks, saying she finally got something right. Then she asks if he's also divorced from his second wife, and he casually admits they don't live together. Switching gears, she decides to tell him her wish. He gives her the go-ahead and she asks if she can keep telling her mom they're dating. Though she thinks it sounds immature, she explains her mom actually approves of him. He jokes, asking if her mom approves because he graduated from KNU Medical School. She bluntly says her mom values education and background a lot. Curious, he asks if it matters to her too, and she admits it's not unimportant but there's something more significant. He guesses intimacy, but she shakes her head, saying she barely remembers what that's like. When he asks what's more important, she says it's laughter, the kind of happiness that makes you smile and laugh endlessly with someone. He asks if her first crush was a comedian, and she playfully agrees before clarifying that he wasn't. He teases her about being unsure of her first crush and not remembering her first time, concluding her early experiences didn't go well. She blames him for the second part, and since he can't fix her first love, he offers to help her recall her first time. Confused, she asks what he means, and when he explains, she questions if he's lost his mind. He tells her to forget it if she's not interested, but she grabs his arm and quickly clarifies that she didn't say she wasn't interested. She wonders if she'd be able to go through with this sober and considers telling him she can't do it. But honestly, she doesn't really remember much, just a faint sense of pleasure. She recalls their earlier conversation when he dismissed her second time, saying he couldn't care less and it wasn't his business. She convinces herself that she only enjoyed it because she was drunk or maybe even imagined it felt good. "Since she's taking forever," he shouts, asking if she fell into the toilet and drowned. She yells back that she's coming and decides to check for herself whether she'll like it or not, treating it as a review of what happened last time. She tiptoes out and peeks at him. He raises an eyebrow, asking why she took so long, saying he thought it was just a quick shower. She fires back that he could have found something productive to do instead of just sitting there. She glances around and notices the place is surprisingly tidy, thanks to how he cleans up whenever Sol visits. She admits it doesn't look like a total dump. As she moves closer, he suddenly grabs her hand and scolds her for touching the doorframe, saying she has no idea how many germs are on it. She rolls her eyes, thinking it's no big deal, but he leans in and smirks, telling her it matters because of what they're about to do. And with that, they get intimate. She feels like she was basically treated like an intimacy toy and finds it frustrating how annoyingly good he is at everything. She wonders if this is what it's like to be with a 30-year-old and if all men in their 30s are like this. Still, she figures it's better than him being terrible in bed. She decides that if anyone ever asks, she'll just say her first kiss and losing her virginity happened with her neighbor, a stranger really, but she's definitely not sharing any more details. When he opens the door, he wonders if she's pretending to be asleep. He's not convinced but lies down anyway. She feels it's way too awkward to open her eyes now. Normally, she can't sleep without hugging her pillow, but it seems like that's already been claimed. Her driver sighs and says it's been a long day, then tells her to stop crying because they said Sol is fine. He warns her that her eyes will be all puffy tomorrow and they won't be able to shoot. She snaps that she doesn't care about any of that. The only thing that matters right now is Sol. She admits she called so many times but missed every call, then says she's a terrible mother. The driver shakes his head, telling her she's not, and that Sol is lucky to have a mom like her. She says her mom used to be the most beautiful person in the world, but then bitterly adds, "Who cares if she's beautiful?" Later, she picks Sol up from Jaewoo's and hugs her tightly. She says Sol must have been so scared earlier and apologizes for coming so late. Sol surprises her by saying she wasn't scared and talks about the big girl who swooped in like a superhero. But then she adds that her mom is way cooler, like Wonder Woman. Her mom promises to be there first next time, no matter what. Sol smiles and says it's okay if she's late, as long as she keeps her promise to show up. She's thrilled her mom is making her something to eat and asks for pan-fried zucchini, sunny-side-up eggs, and a few other dishes. When her mom serves her, she excitedly thanks her for the meal. After a while, her mom asks if she's trying to act all cute, and she playfully replies that she might just keep eating with a smile if her mom keeps doing this. As she dozes off in bed, her mom watches her for a moment. Shortly after, there's a beep and Shin-era walks in saying she's back. She comments on her coming home early and asks if something happened on set. Before Era can answer, she smacks her arm lightly. Era, already teary-eyed, asks what's going on. She questions why Era didn't answer her phone, even though she had explained her schedule and texted her to pick up Sol. Era admits she forgot she had turned her phone off for a big presentation. Frustrated, she accuses Era of always prioritizing work over her and Sol, adding that she doesn't care about them. She suggests Era might as well move in with Jaewoo since they both seem obsessed with chasing money. Era warns her not to say something she'll regret, and explains that she turned her phone off because of her constant calls and clinginess. She insists none of this would have happened otherwise. She calls Era hot-headed for speaking to her like that and demands she get to the point instead of dumping her emotions on her. Sol, overhearing everything, softly mutters, "It's okay." In her sleep, Sol clutches her toy and starts crying. Jaewoo comforts her, saying it's fine and they can try again. Half asleep, she mutters, "It's okay, we can just try again." He notices Harang knocked out beside her, clearly having a nightmare, and comments on how much attention she always seems to need. Suddenly, she rolls off the bed and lands on the floor. She groggily rubs her eyes, wondering when she fell asleep why she's on the floor and if she was talking in her sleep. He casually replies, "Nope, but if you were, it was probably nonsense." There's a rattling sound as her mom angrily asks her dad if he's seriously going to act like this. She reminds him she worked her ass off to support him, only for him to treat her this way. He sighs and tells her to stop saying that because they're married, and that's what wives are supposed to do. She snaps back, listing all the things she does, taking care of the house, the kids, and making his lunch every day, even on weekends, without a single break. She suggests he try being a stay-at-home dad while she works, so he can see if he can handle even half as well as she did. He admits he never said it was easy, but insists they each have their roles. Meanwhile, Harang is crying. Her brother tells her it's okay and says she should just focus on him if she's scared. She asks if he's scared too and what they'll do if their parents get divorced this time. She mutters "Appa" and suddenly falls to the ground. She blinks, confused, and asks why she's on the floor and if she was talking in her sleep. She sneaks past the living room and sees no one there, so she slowly opens her bedroom door, making sure it doesn't creak. Just as she's about to relax, her mom calls out and asks if she's had dinner. She quickly says she grabbed a bite with Dabin. Her mom scolds her, saying she should have come home to eat, but then tells her to get some rest since she must be tired. She's relieved her mom doesn't notice her change of clothes but suddenly remembers she forgot all about Dabin. She calls her and immediately asks why she hasn't been reading her messages and if everything turned out okay. Dabin assures her it did. She almost tells her about Jungja but stops herself, remembering Jaewoo's warning to keep it a secret. Instead, Dabin brings up Jaewoo, mentioning he's married and has a kid, so there's no reason to be jealous. She quickly says she has zero interest in him, though she thinks to herself that didn't stop them from crossing a line. She then blurts out that he's divorced. Dabin asks about the kid and she says her mom came to pick her up. Dabin calls her a poor kid, saying she looked terrified but was trying so hard not to cry. She points out that for kids that age, their parents are their whole world, and it must be so hard for her with her parents separated. She imagines how shattered the kid must feel but still tries to hold it together. She agrees, thinking that's probably true, especially if the girl doesn't have contact with her other mom. She admits she got so overwhelmed at the time that she didn't even think about how the girl felt. Dabin asks what overwhelmed her so much, and she explains it was because everything happened so fast. Before Dabin can ask more, she tells her she has to go, promises to see her at the library tomorrow and asks her to save her a seat. Then she ends the call. She recalls her friend asking what was so overwhelming and thinks about the moments with Jaewoo. She regrets how embarrassing it was and feels frustrated that he's nothing like her first impression of him. He smokes and she can't get over how different he is. Jaewoo drinks, feeling irritated with himself. Sol just went through something terrible and he wonders why he's even thinking about Harang. He shakes his head, remembering her falling off the bed and yelling, "Appa!" The balcony, Harang surprises him, telling him littering cigarettes carries a fine. He hands her the cigarette with a smirk, and she gives him an ashtray, telling him to use it. He questions if it's okay to give something like that to anyone, and she says he's not just anyone, listing her first kiss and virginity as examples. He says he'd rather stay neighbors and isn't interested in dating her. She tells him he doesn't need to worry because she doesn't see him as boyfriend material either. He refuses to return the ashtray, claiming it's his now. She warns him she'll report him if he litters again. He thanks her for helping Sol, then reminds her they didn't actually do anything. She brushes it off and storms inside, muttering about his use of the word yet, and wondering if he's implying it's going to happen. She decides he has no redeeming qualities. Jaewoo stays outside, trying to push thoughts of her out of his head but struggling. He wakes up, shaking his head, wondering what kind of dream he just had. He blames her for it, annoyed that she's even invading his subconscious. In her room, she tries on a few dresses, dismissing one for being too dark and another for looking like she's trying too hard. She tells herself the chances of running into him are slim, but even if she does, it's not like she plans to say anything. As she heads out, her mom reminds her not to skip lunch. She promises she won't, but then freezes in shock when she sees Jaewoo outside. She almost has a heart attack and asks if he spends all day smoking. She jokes that he's outside so often she might think he lives there more than indoors. He doesn't bother replying, but when she mentions the ashtray, he asks if she'd rather he throw it away. She snaps back, asking if he always has to have a comeback for everything. As she walks away, he comments on her look and suggests she try a different style. She mutters that she doesn't care about his opinion, calling him a jackass, but then immediately pulls out a mirror and fixes her hair. He smirks, pointing out he wasn't talking about her hair. He meant she should put on more clothes because she's basically walking around half naked. Completely wiped out, she comes home later, stares at the ashtray and wonders if he's napping now. She shakes her head, deciding he's hopelessly addicted to smoking. On the stairs, Jaewoo reminds Sol not to run or she might trip, but she wants to beat him home. When Sol spots Harang, she lights up and calls her hero, running straight to her. He looks confused and asks who she's talking about, but Sol hugs Harang tightly. He accuses Harang of stalking him, and she fires back that he's the one freaking her out. Sol proudly declares she won the race and now gets a wish. Jaewoo asks what she wants to eat, listing options, but Harang guesses Sol isn't into regular kids' food. Instead, Sol surprises them by asking for a new mommy. He reminds her she already has 2 mommies, but Sol insists it's not enough, the more the better. Harang can't believe what she's hearing. Jaewoo jokes if this is some kind of playing house scenario, saying he'll be her new mommy, but Sol shakes her head and says she wants Harang instead. Hugging her tightly, Sol explains that Harang is just like Wonder Woman, just like her mommy, so she wants her to join the team. Harang laughs nervously, telling Sol she's nowhere near as brave or heroic as her moms. Then Sol drops a bomb, saying her moms don't let her dad kiss them even though they kiss each other. She adds she feels sorry for him. Harang is stunned, and Jaewoo looks like he wants to disappear, dropping the bag he's holding. Sol hides behind Harang, giggling, leaving Harang awkwardly stuck in the middle. She knocks on the door, asking if Jungja is okay and if she's sure she isn't sick. Shin-era calls Jaewoo, asking if he can watch Sol for a few more days and if he knows her preschool schedule. She promises him dinner as thanks and asks Sol if she's ready to stay with her dad a little longer. Sol lights up, asking if her dad is picking her up at preschool today, and Era teases, asking if she likes him that much. Sol nods and hugs her tightly. Era thanks Jaewoo again, explaining she already called the preschool to let them know Sol isn't coming today so they can just stay home. He tells her to stop stalling and head to work since she's already running late. He notices Sol's hair and asks if she did it herself. She proudly confirms, explaining her two moms were busy so she handled it on her own. She says she's a good girl for doing it and he agrees, telling her her hair looks pretty. He adds that she doesn't always have to be such a good girl though. She looks confused, asking if that would make her a bad person. He shakes his head, saying not being a good girl doesn't make her bad. He points out that he isn't nice and asks if she thinks he's bad. She grins and says she still likes him even if he is. He chuckles, saying she doesn't think he's nice, but he likes her too. While fixing her hair, she asks what the new style is called. He admits he just made it up because it looks nice but realizes it resembles Harang's hairstyle. Sol beams and says she wants to go to a kid cafe with her hair like this. He nods, agreeing to take her, thinking he's somehow signed up for more than just babysitting. Harang didn't expect to end up back here. He tells Sol he'll turn on her favorite show and suggests she go inside and watch it for a bit. She asks for a specific episode. He comments on her hairstyle, saying it's cute, and she mentions how pretty it is. He starts talking about a character from a kids' show, Doremi, where they evolve, but she corrects him, saying they transform. He tells her Sol wants her hair done like that, and Harang wonders how she even knows about Doremi. He takes her inside and quickly shuts the door. She wonders why he doesn't want to hear that she looks cute. He says it's a bit complicated to explain, but if she understands, he's just legally her father, and her primary caregivers are the two women Sol mentioned. She quickly picks up on it. Harang mentions she was just studying for the bar at the library, and she adds that Sol's two moms made her think he was divorced twice, but now she knows they're a couple. He explains that gay marriage isn't legal in Korea yet, and Sol needed legal registration after birth. He played the role of her father but admits that it's a marriage of convenience. Harang notes it's better for Jungja's career to appear single, so he's legally married to Shin-era. She wonders if Sol was adopted, and he explains that Era, Jungja's wife, gave birth to her. He tells her not to imagine anything silly, saying it was through a sperm bank, and he legally married Era because there was no other option. Since women can't apply for such things unless they're married, she agrees and adds that it requires the spouse's consent. Harang asks if he doesn't plan to get married, and he questions why she asks. She responds she's curious if he'd file for divorce if he wanted to, but he says that's enough for today, and it's better if she doesn't know all the details. Harang says she's surprised because it's not easy raising a daughter who isn't biologically his. He responds that he's been raising Sol since she was a baby, and he sees her as his daughter. Harang doubts it though. He asks what she thinks of him, and she replies he's her perverted older neighbor, and she wouldn't be surprised if he was Una Liv the next day. He laughs, calling her the pervert. She wonders how he manages to raise such an adorable kid when he's so grumpy. He says it's enough, and she clarifies she didn't mean it that way, adding that he looks a bit more cheerful lately. She mimics how grumpy he looked at them earlier. He jokingly says she's really pushing it, and she notes that he just laughed, but he refuses to admit it. He tells her to mind her language because there's a kid around, and she calls him immature. Sol calls him, and he asks if she's hungry. She nods, so he tells her to have new mommy play with her while he makes something to eat. She doesn't want to accept that, so he tells her to just humor him, making it clear he doesn't like her and never will. She reluctantly agrees but wonders why he's getting so angry. While playing with her, she asks what her favorite game is, but Sol suggests they watch a TV show instead, as Jaewoo is busy cooking. Meanwhile, Era asks Jungja if she's done. She sighs, feeling a weight on her chest but still pushes through to help her. After a while, she turns to Sol's mom, her voice softer than before, telling her to go ahead and finish her dinner since she's already done for the day. There's no rush and she isn't in the mood to eat. She gently mentions that she isn't hungry and apologizes for it, explaining how she tried to control the urge to throw up while eating, but the moment she saw her weight go up, it felt like she couldn't stop herself. Her mind swirls with feelings of frustration and guilt, but she tries to push those emotions down, focusing on the comfort of the conversation instead. Sol's mom, understanding, simply says she's happy to sit there and talk with her, not minding the pause in the meal. Conversation shifts and she offers a surprising compliment, telling her how gorgeous she looks even with the barf on her face. Sol looks at her, her eyes wide with surprise, asking her to show her face and not wipe it away with her hand. She laughs softly, trying to lighten the mood, telling Sol that it's just vomit, and that it isn't really anything to be grossed out by. She feels a little ridiculous, but somehow it's comforting to know Sol isn't running away from her in disgust. She wraps her arms around her in a tight hug, smiling and murmuring that she's still pretty even when she's annoyed. Sol doesn't respond right away, her quiet smile saying enough. She admits that part of the reason she loves her is for her looks, joking that she'll probably dump her when she's old and wrinkly, but the joke falls flat as she watches Sol's expression. Sol gives her a teasing look, calling it a charming way of saying she wants to be with her forever, adding how she always gets the last word. Jungja smiles softly, knowing that Sol understands her in ways no one else does. She chuckles, admitting that it's exactly why she loves her, why she feels so strongly for her. She thinks back to when she first transferred to the school, just after the second semester had begun. First, it had been overwhelming, but she quickly became accustomed to the attention. It wasn't just her looks, though they certainly helped, but the people around her also admired her personality. She was nice to everyone, always putting in the effort to make others feel comfortable, and they returned that kindness by speaking highly of her to others. Being surrounded by people, having them look up to her, was a strange kind of comfort. It was a contrast to how Era's family responded when they found out she was gay. The harshness in their reaction was still fresh in her mind, like an open wound that never quite healed. Era's family had rejected her, calling her everything from selfish to delusional, and it hurt. Even now, as Jungja sits here with Sol, she feels the sting of it, knowing how much it had affected Era. But despite the coldness of the world around her, she's still here, still fighting for the chance to love and be loved. They forced her to undergo exorcisms and go through various psychological treatments. She felt like they were basically abusing her. As a new student, Jungja knew little about her, not even her name or what she looked like. All she noticed was that she often dozed off at the desk. Though they were classmates, their interaction was minimal. She tells her classmates, who are gossiping behind her, to either lower the noise or move outside, referring to them as minions with their queen bee because they're being too loud. One of the students asks what she just called them and what her problem is, to which she asks if she's about to get hit. Jungja apologizes on their behalf, but her gossip partner questions why she's apologizing since they didn't start it, noting that Era is just jealous of her. They mention that Era takes pills for her depression. Jungja tells them to stop because they're all classmates, but one of them admits that she sometimes gets pissy over the smallest things. They decide to leave her alone though because she's had it rough, and one mentions that her dad owns Daewon Corporation. Jungja admits they were being pretty loud, then suggests they move out to the snack shop. They talk about her being way too nice for her own good and worry that people might treat her like a doormat. Jaewoo sits on a swing next to her and asks what she's doing today, considering the things her parents are making her go through are pointless. She doesn't want to be reminded, but admits that a shaman was hired a few days ago, and now they want to bring in a priest. She says they want to return to the priest's method. Jaewoo tells her to fake it and say the demons are gone, and she says she would if it would actually work. Passing by, she notices him and decides to speak to him. She tells him that if he keeps saying stupid things, she might reveal his secret. He asks what secret, and she responds that he's missing half his brain. Meanwhile, Jungja doubts anyone would be with someone as snappy as her. The yellow-haired girl approaches Jungja, her posture exuding confidence as she tries to strike up a conversation. Jungja doesn't hide her skepticism, her gaze piercing the girl as she bluntly asks, "Who are you?" The girl doesn't seem fazed by the bluntness, casually responding, "I'm the queen bee who sits behind you." Jungja's brow arches in disbelief, the word queen bee making her voice drip with sarcasm. She doesn't understand how someone could refer to themselves that way, especially when it sounds so juvenile. But the girl quickly corrects herself, adding that she prefers to be called a loyal posse, claiming they're simply friends. Jungja looks at her, an eyebrow raised even higher now, as if she can't believe the audacity of the girl's words. It's clear that the girl doesn't really get what it means to be friends. Jungja introduces herself, and the girl gives her a look of recognition, but the name doesn't seem to make an impression. Jungja thinks the name sounds strange, but she doesn't want to bother addressing it. The whole situation feels beneath her. Yet, something nags at her in the back of her mind. She's not used to these kinds of interactions, but she knows that, as much as she wants to ignore it, the minor incident at school could turn into something bigger. She knows how quickly things can spiral when the public gets involved, especially if she's ever to make a name for herself as an actress. So, she mentally braces herself and tells herself to suck it up. She's been through worse. Apologizing for something that isn't really her fault shouldn't be that hard. As she starts to make the decision to apologize, her thoughts drift back to when she first came to Seoul. It wasn't that long ago that her grandmother, who had raised her all on her own, passed away. She'd left the countryside, looking to chase her dream of becoming an actress, something her grandmother never supported. The thought of leaving her grandmother behind still stings, but it was something Jungja had to do for herself. That moment of departure marked the beginning of her new life, one where she could escape the small-town girl she had been. The first step in her transformation had been the official name change. Lee Jungja became Lee Baiyal, a new identity for a new life. Changing her name wasn't just about shedding the weight of the past, it was symbolic, a way to start fresh. Felt like erasing a part of her history, something she needed to do in order to move forward. Despite all of that, Jungja still finds herself doubting whether the girl in front of her is genuine or not. She isn't so sure she's ready to deal with the small yet seemingly dangerous conflicts that come with fame. Jae-woo, standing nearby, observes the situation with growing frustration. He doesn't understand why Jungja is making such a big deal out of it. To him, the girl hasn't done anything wrong, at least not enough to warrant such a cold response. He thinks she's overreacting, making something out of nothing. He watches as Jungja coolly rejects the girl's attempt to be friendly, even questioning why she's apologizing in the first place. Jungja feels like the girl is lying, pretending to want to be friends when she clearly doesn't care. She points out how the girl didn't even know her name before, which makes her question the sincerity of her words. It's almost like the girl is playing some sort of game, pretending to be nice but not meaning a single word she says. Jae-woo, growing irritated, steps in. He tells her to stop, insisting that the girl hasn't done anything wrong and she doesn't need to be so harsh. Jungja isn't fazed though. She stands firm, looking at Jae-woo with a cold expression. She isn't being harsh, she simply tells it like it is. The girl is fake and that's all there is to it. It doesn't matter if it's a small thing or a big thing, it's still a lie, and Jungja isn't going to pretend that everything is fine. She doesn't care if the girl gets offended, this is the real world and she's not here to play pretend. She actually thinks it's sad that she isn't putting any effort at all. When asked what she means, she explains that seeing people just coast through life makes her angry. She's pissed that people who don't put in effort still have things handed to them. She wonders if she's acting this way because she's really jealous, because no matter how hard someone tries, things don't always work out the way they want. She tells the blue-haired girl to keep quiet since she knows nothing, but the girl responds that she's the clueless one, acting like she has the hardest life ever. She questions if the blue-haired girl knows what people really think of her and spills that they see her as a spoiled rich kid who throws a fit over the smallest inconveniences. As she rushes to confront her, Jae-woo tries to stop her. The girl dares her to repeat what she said, then questions if she thinks she can talk to her like that just because she's popular. She's already on the floor when Jae-woo tells the blue-haired girl to back off. She complains about getting a scar on her leg, but she states that the girl started it and doesn't have to act like she's better than everyone else. She warns her to stick with her clique if she wants to act all high and mighty. She doesn't think the girl is really sorry and wonders why she came over and made her lose her cool. When the blue-haired girl offers to help her up, she springs up and hits her cheek. She says she thinks a few scratches aren't a big deal, but they are to her. She talks about how the girl has been pampered all her life and concludes that's why she can't empathize with others. It's so irritating, and she notes that she's the one who's practically royalty. She asks if she's done, and Jae-woo tells her it's okay since it looks like the girl is injured. But then she stops, questions herself, and apologizes for the incident. She promises to make it up to her with a proper apology next time. He tells her to do something about her temper and questions if she's still shocked that she got hit. She responds that she's never seen anyone cry and still look pretty. He smacks his face in disappointment, saying the situation is a lot, but her previous response sounded like a cheesy line from a low-budget romance movie. Harang expresses surprise when she finds out they've been dating since high school. She asks about him, and he responds that he spends most of his life studying, but she doubts it. She stands up abruptly, her thoughts racing as she processes everything. She's here because he asked her to help, but now he's making a big deal out of something that seems so trivial. The thought crosses her mind that she's probably giving in too easily. She's helping him out, yet he's acting like he's in charge of how she should address him. She tells herself she's going to play along for now, just a little longer, but it's getting on her nerves. She bites her lip and glances at him with a small smirk, reminding him that they're supposed to be picking up Seoul. As she turns to leave, he follows her, trying to keep things light. He's not sure how to handle this situation, but he knows they can't keep arguing. Then, just as she missteps, her foot slipping on the uneven pavement, he reacts instinctively. Without thinking, he reaches out and catches her, his arms securing her before she can hit the ground. She looks up at him, taken off guard. He holds her for a second longer than necessary, his grip firm but not too tight. He's a bit flustered by the sudden closeness but doesn't let it show. "You all right?" he asks, almost awkwardly. She pulls back immediately, clearly flustered as well, but refuses to admit it. Seoul's teacher greets Jae-woo, mentioning it's been a while since they last saw each other. He says hello and informs her that he'll be picking Seoul up later because her mom is swamped at work, so he's covering for now. She agrees, and the teacher tells Seoul to say goodbye to her dad. Seoul tells her dad not to forget to come with her new mommy later. Jae-woo stays silent, and the teacher wonders if she should pretend she didn't hear that, laughing. He tells her he'll be back to pick Seoul up, and she assures him they'll take good care of his daughter today. The doorbell rings. Seoul's mom tells her to answer it since she's in the middle of doing dishes, and Seoul agrees. She asks who it is, and Jae-woo says he needs to talk to her. Seoul steps outside, surprised it's so early, and asks what he wants. He questions if she thinks she can pretend to be his daughter's mom. She asks what he expects her to do, stating that she thought they were just playing house the other day. He reminds her that she told him to bring Seoul when picking her up from daycare and admits he's not sure how to handle this, so he suggests telling Seoul it was all make-believe. Seoul asks if that means she has to spend time away from her moms, and Jae-woo confirms. She agrees to be her pretend mom until she goes back to her real moms. He wonders why she's doubtful, and she asks what's with his attitude. Then she jokes that he's pretending to be her fake boyfriend right now, which has made things a lot easier for her since she now gets permission from her mom to hang out with her boyfriend. He realizes she's been using him as an excuse for everything and is surprised her mom hasn't figured it out yet. She decides to do him this favor because she owes him, and he thanks her. He tells her to meet him a little earlier than 6 o'clock because his daughter's daycare ends at that time. She agrees. He mentions her outfit and tells her not to dress like this next time. As he leaves, she says he should give her some credit. She may suck at adulting, but she's not dumb enough to wear this. Back in her room, she wonders what she should wear. Something that makes her look more mature, maybe? Shin Seoul is in the rabbit class at Haseol Daycare Center. She has 2 superhero moms who do everything they can to make her smile when she's feeling down. Her moms may be the last ones to pick her up out of all the other moms, but she knows they always show up if she waits, so she isn't scared of waiting anymore. Her dad doesn't have a superhero mom, but Seoul wishes she could be his superhero. She's too small to hug him, so she made a superhero mom for him instead. She's not taller than him, but he always seems happy when they're together. It's a secret, but Seoul can tell what her dad is feeling and thinking just by looking at his face. Even when he's not smiling, she knows he's happy. Someone mentions that they heard she has 2 moms. Stopping her from falling, Jae-woo wonders why she's not moving, realizing that if he lets go, she might crash to the ground. But with her in this position, he can't exactly lift her either without making things awkward. He hesitates for a moment, trying to find a way to stabilize her. Finally, he pulls her up, half annoyed, half relieved, saying it was just an accident and that she didn't have to smack him. She doesn't say a word as she walks away, leaving him to wonder if she's going to pretend nothing happened. His mind races as he follows her, his steps echoing in the silence. He thinks to himself, at this rate, they might get to the daycare center without a single word exchanged between them. He knows he's the one who messed up, but he can't help but wonder why she's so mad. He didn't get too handsy, he's pretty sure, but still, he did save her from tripping and possibly bashing her nose. If anything, that should have earned him a thank you. Instead, she's walking away as if nothing happened. He realizes, with a bit of frustration, that she's not even acknowledging the situation, and it's starting to get under his skin. He's starting to feel like he should have just let her fall, but he's not that kind of person. After all, he didn't even touch her inappropriately, so why is she acting like he did something so terrible? It's not like he hasn't touched her there before, though he's not sure why that suddenly feels like a big deal. He's getting more confused by the second. He decides he needs to clear the air. He walks up to her, calling her kid, and says he knows she's upset, but she shouldn't ignore him. Kid, come on, I know you're mad, but this isn't helping anything, he says, trying to sound understanding. She snaps back, her voice sharp. Don't call me that again. Her eyes burn with frustration, and it only makes him realize just how much he's messed up. He's not sure what to say at this point, but he apologizes, calling her by her name this time. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I get it. I'm sorry. Call me Mrs. Hio if you really want to be respectful. It's a bit jarring, but he agrees, trying to be mature about it. He buttons up her shirt as they continue walking, but then he stops. And you should wear a bra next time, he says, his voice casual as he checks her out, clearly uncomfortable but trying to be helpful. Unless you're really confident you can hide it, but I think everyone can tell. She freezes, staring at him, clearly taken aback. What? She asks, her voice sharp with disbelief. Jae-woo quickly realizes he's crossed a line. I mean, you're kind of letting everyone know you're, well, you know, he says, trailing off awkwardly. Just try to be more discreet. We're trying to keep it all low-key, right? She glares at him, her hands now on her hips. What in the world are you talking about? She says, her tone laced with confusion and annoyance. Stop being so vague and just say what you mean. His face reddens slightly. We'll continue this later when Sol's asleep, he says, trying to steer the conversation in a calmer direction. I'll call you Mrs. Hio from now on, okay? She can't believe he just did that, but she doesn't say anything more. It's all just too much for her to process right now. She was already irritated, and now she's stuck in this awkward mess with him. Before she can respond, his phone rings, interrupting the tension-filled moment. He quickly pulls it out, glancing at the screen. He gives her one last glance, as if silently acknowledging their awkwardness, before he answers. Yeah? He says, his voice much more composed now that he's got a reason to focus on something else. She stands there for a moment, arms crossed, still processing everything he just said. She's not sure if she's more angry or confused, but one thing's for sure, she's not about to let him off the hook that easily. Not now, not ever. Little Shin Sol lines up all her toys like they're royalty preparing for a grand parade, her eyes sparkling with admiration. One of her classmates waddles over, arms crossed like a tiny detective on a case, and squints at her. So about the whole two moms thing, he prods, his tone dripping with the same curiosity that gets kids in trouble. Sol, ever the enthusiastic informant, beams up at him and informs him she now has 3 moms. She announces proudly, as if she just won the world record for most moms collected. The boy blinks. He was already struggling to wrap his head around 2, but 3 just feels like showing off. His mom says even 2 is weird, which means 3 must be some kind of crime against nature. The other kids catch wind of the conversation, and suddenly Sol is the main act in the lunchtime gossip festival. She's the only one with 3 moms, which automatically makes her the weird one. But weird is just another word for special, right? Apparently not, because the boy huffs, puffs, and shoves her shoulder like he's declaring dominance on a playground jungle. Sol isn't the type to back down from a fight, especially one this ridiculous. With the confidence of someone who just learned to tie their own shoes, she shoves him right back. Harder. He stumbles, his face scrunching up like a crumpled homework sheet. Tears well up instantly. He wails like a siren, alerting the entire classroom to the tragedy that just unfolded. The little girl shrugs, completely unbothered. Getting in trouble is a small price to pay for defending her 3 moms. If the teacher calls them, maybe she'll bring all 3 to the meeting. That'll really give them something to talk about. Her dad had told his sweet little girl that it's okay not to be nice all the time, which is a good thing because right now she's fresh out of kindness. Before she can land another argument-winning shove, the teacher swoops in like a superhero whose only power is separating brawling children. She peels them apart with the efficiency of someone who's done this too many times before. Not too long after, a very breathless Mrs. Hio bursts into the school, dragging along her pretend husband, who looks like he got roped into this last minute. Dad, who is far less winded, immediately locks eyes with Sol. "What happened?" he asks, his protective parent radar on high alert. Teacher waves a hand dismissively. "Oh, just a little scuffle. Nothing serious." She gestures toward Hyuk, the pint-sized rival in question, who is still sniffling dramatically like he just survived a great tragedy. His mother is apparently on her way, and the teacher insists that both kids should settle this peacefully in the presence of their guardians, like tiny diplomats at a very unserious peace summit. Meanwhile, Mrs. Hio is still trying to catch her breath, looking like she just ran a marathon with no training. The little girl takes one look at her, tilts her head, and decides this is a problem she can solve. Without hesitation, she steps forward and wraps her arms around her pretend mom, squeezing tight. It's part comfort, part support, and mostly just Sol's way of saying, "You made it, you're safe now." Mrs. Hio wheezes. Sol's hugs are not for the weak. Our girl gently pats young Sol's back, her voice soft as she asks what exactly went down between her and Hyuk. Sol, however, has priorities, and explaining a playground squabble is not at the top of the list. Instead, she tilts her head, eyes filled with the kind of curiosity that can shake an adult's entire sense of self. She asks if our female lead is also one of her sweet, loving mommies. Our girl freezes. Lying to children is generally frowned upon, but Sol's expression makes it especially difficult. The little girl isn't demanding anything, just asking, hoping. All she really wants is for Mrs. Hio to be Daddy's new mommy, the missing piece to their little family puzzle. The een to his yang. Harang exhales. "That's a task she can manage," she assures her. It's a half promise, half surrender. Sol's face immediately brightens, a small giggle escaping before she turns to grab her dad's hand. Her previous battle with Hyuk already ancient history. Back at home, the little girl settles into bed with the ease of someone who has no regrets. No more playground politics, no more deep questions, just warm blankets and dreams ahead. Her dad peeks in one last time, tucks her in, and presses a kiss to her forehead before finally shutting the door. Sol sleeps soundly, confident that everything is exactly as it should be. Finally, the fake couple can breathe. Chaos of the day is behind them, and for the first time in hours, they get a moment to sit without worrying about tiny fists flying. Harang leans back with a sigh. When the teacher called and said Sol got into a fight, our girl panicked. She thought the little girl might have gotten hurt. She shakes her head, recalling the showdown with Hyuk and his mother. That little boy had been furious, but no tears, no blood. Things could have been worse. Our male lead chuckles, rubbing the back of his neck. That rattled him too. He's never had to deal with anything like that before. He feels so lucky she was there. Harang waves him off, but he knows it's true. Sol wasn't too shaken because her mommy showed up. The little girl had to be scared, but she never shed a single tear. A true warrior's spirit. As they talk, Jaewoo's gaze drifts completely on its own, of course. His brain is mid-conversation about his daughter's resilience, but his eyes? They have other priorities. They catch the curve of Harang's chest, and just like that, the topic of playground battles is entirely forgotten. There are other things demanding his attention now. Jaewoo leans back with a smug grin. So, back to what they were talking about earlier, our female lead blinks at him, unimpressed. "There's nothing to talk about. Tough happened. You grabbed my chest. End of story." Jaewoo sighs dramatically as if deeply wounded by the injustice of it all. First of all, he only grabbed our girl to stop her from tripping. She's welcome, by the way. Did she thank him? No. Instead, our girl smacked him in the face. Hard. He rubs his cheek as if the memory still stings. Not forgetting this evening, when he very kindly advised her to cover up properly on the way to school. Harang scoffs. "Wow." He acts like he's practically a saint. "Thank you so much for your many, many good deeds," she says it with peak sarcasm. He raises a brow, clearly not satisfied. "Oh no, that's not enough." Words aren't gonna cut it. Our girl crosses her arms. She feels she owes him nothing. He leans in, eyes gleaming with pure mischief. Let's review. She owes him for saving her from falling, for taking a slap like a champ, and for his excellent fashion advice. Harang rolls her eyes. He's ready for battle. If she thinks she's getting away without paying him back somehow, she's got another thing coming. Our girl, with great reluctance, decides to pay off her so-called debt by doing our male lead's chores. She scrubs dishes, folds laundry, and wonders because she has way too much time to think while doing this. If he's planning to jump her like some protagonist in one of those eki mangas, she's definitely not admitting to reading. Once she's finished, she marches up to him. Dishes done. Laundry done. Our guy, sitting comfortably like a man who's been waiting for this very moment, meets her gaze with a dangerous glint in his eyes. He says he won't touch her again. The words are said so casually, so shamelessly, like he's asking for a second helping of dinner. Harang's brain short-circuits for a second before she manages to scoff. He doesn't back down. He leans in, his face unreadable. He's serious. Her stance immediately shifts to defensive mode. Our guy doesn't even blink, the air thickens, his gaze steady, his intentions clear. His desire has hit its peak, but he's not going to do a thing unless she wants him to. Our girl, arms crossed, sighs dramatically. She agrees. Jaewoo smirks. This is getting interesting. He flicks Harang's nose, his smirk full of mischief. He teases her. Harang, unimpressed, immediately starts smacking him. She doesn't hold back, hitting him repeatedly until he dramatically collapses to the ground like he's been shot in a historical war drama. Groaning, he rolls onto his side, clutching his stomach like he's nursing a fatal wound. He mutters weakly, eyes fixed on the wall like he's preparing to say his final words. Harang crosses her arms. Quit being a baby. Silence. She frowns, leaning in slightly. A tiny flicker of guilt sneaks in. Maybe she went too far? She didn't mean to hit him that hard. Just as she's about to reach out, Jaewoo moves like lightning. In one swift motion, he turns, grabs her, and suddenly boom. She's pinned beneath him. Harang blinks. This is a compromising position. Jaewoo, looking way too pleased with himself, rests his weight just enough to keep her in place. Our girl should really work on trusting people less before worrying about boundaries. She opens her mouth to argue, but before she can say a word, Jaewoo shuts her up with action. The positioning is set, the opportunity is there, and he doesn't waste a second. Harang realizes, maybe a little too late, that she's not the only one setting the rules here. They get intimate. After their moment, Jaewoo and Harang freeze, locked in place, faces mere centimeters apart. The air between them is thick, charged, and just when it seems like something irreversible might happen, a small yawn cuts through the tension like a sword. The little girl shuffles down the hall, her tiny feet patting against the floor as she slides her dad's door open. She stands there, rubbing her eyes, looking like she just stepped out of a dream, and next order of business is to announce her hunger. Our male lead, who is miraculously alone and still covered from the waist down, manages to keep his cool. Just barely. If she had come in even a second earlier, disaster. He clears his throat, forcing his voice to stay normal. He says he'll make something soon. The little girl, satisfied with this answer, gives a sleepy nod and cheerfully shuts the door behind her, skipping off like she didn't just nearly cause a heart attack. Jaewoo and Harang let out the longest, most exhausted sighs of relief. That was too close. Harang slumps back, trying to regulate her heartbeat while Jaewoo grins at her. So he wants to know if she's upset. She stares at him for a beat before smacking him. Hard. He groans, rubbing his arm. At some point, this is gonna count as actual violence. Harang shrugs. Our girl glares at Jaewoo, her voice hitting octaves only dogs can hear. You lied about shutting the door earlier. Our guy, completely unbothered, stretches lazily. Yeah, but it worked out, didn't it? She considers hitting him again, but remembers someone still needs to cook for Seoul. Go make dinner. She's hungry. Our male lead groans like he's being sent to war. 5 more minutes. Harang does not have time for this. By the time he finally drags himself into the kitchen, she's already cleaned up and is still fuming. Acting like I was the only one excited, she mutters under her breath. But there's no time to dwell. Dinner with the little girl awaits. Our female lead finds the little girl and smiles. I'm staying for dinner, by the way. Sol, ever the sharp observer, tilts her head. Oh? I didn't see you in Daddy's room. So she wants to know where our female lead was hiding? Harang laughs, patting Sol's head. She claims she turned invisible. Sol gasps in amazement. Cool. With perfect timing, dinner is ready. The three gather at the table, and Sol wastes no time digging in. Harang watches her, then asks, Do you like it? The little girl, ever brutally honest, nods. The rice is good. But the soup's kinda salty. Harang and Jaewoo exchange a look. They both know exactly who made what. He smirks, nudging Harang. Ha! I wonder whose fault that is? Harang stabs her rice a little harder than necessary. I will throw this bowl at you. Jaewoo grins. Dinner just got a lot more entertaining. The little girl beams at our female lead. Her little face full of pure, innocent joy. It's okay. New mommy can just have twice the rice to balance out the saltiness. Harang blinks. This child is too sweet. Too pure. Like an actual angel sent to humble her. I'll make something even more delicious next time, she promises. The little girl's eyes light up, but then she suddenly remembers something. Oh. But one of my mommies used to say, before she can finish, Jaewoo lets out a weird puffing sound, barely holding back his laughter. Harang immediately elbows him. Would you stop laughing at everything? He straightens, looking offended. I didn't laugh. Sol, without missing a beat, nods. You did. You always laugh when new mommy is here. Silence. Both adults freeze like statues, staring at each other, completely thrown off by the casual way Sol just exposed them. Our guy, choosing the wise option of avoiding this conversation entirely, pushes back his chair and stands. The little girl, completely unfazed by the tension, happily urges Harang to eat more. Harang, still recovering, nods slowly. Meanwhile, Jaewoo walks up to the kitchen sink, staring at the dishes like they hold the answers to life's greatest questions. He takes a deep breath. He needs a second. Maybe two. Jaewoo pats his pockets, fishing out his cigarette pack. He pulls out a stick and places it between his lips, pausing just long enough to glance back at the dining table. Our female lead and the little girl are still eating, chatting away like they've been a family forever. He shakes his head, stepping outside for a quick smoke. As he lights up, a thought sneaks up on him. He's never smoked when Sol was around. Not once. Why? Takes him a second to figure it out. Maybe because he never wanted to leave her alone. Maybe because he knew better than to smoke anywhere near her. It's not like he's the world's greatest dad, but at the very least, he's not that careless. But tonight, Sol's got company. She's fine. He doesn't feel bad sneaking in a quick one. He exhales, muttering to himself. Get it together, man. Harang isn't Sol's stepmom. She's just the weirdo living next door. It's a solid pep talk. Probably. But before he can take another drag, his instincts kick in. He's being watched. Our guy turns, immediately putting out his cigarette like he wasn't just caught red-handed. Sol stands there, hands on her hips, eyes bright with expectation. Daddy! Let's play a game. Jaewoo stares at her, then at his cigarette, then back at her. He sighs. Yeah, all right. Let's go. Looks like that lecture to himself was pointless. Sol clasps her hands together, eyes gleaming with excitement. We're doing magic tricks. You're the assistant, Daddy. Mommy and I are the magicians. Meanwhile, at a different location, cameras roll, capturing the latest scene of a highly anticipated drama. The director watches intently before shouting the inevitable, "Cut!" Crew springs into action, adjusting lights, tweaking the set, and rushing toward their lead actress. Miss Lee, do you need anything? She waves them off with a weak smile. I'm fine. She is not fine. Her head spins, her vision blurs, and it's probably because she was smoking on an empty stomach before arriving on set. The director claps his hands, urging everyone to pick up the pace. They need to move to the next scene, but before anyone can react, Miss Lee sways on her feet and collapses face first to the ground. Panic spreads like wildfire. Crew members rush to her side, voices rising in alarm. Bayal Nuna? Miss Lee. No response. She's completely unconscious. 'Cause of course Sol's mom isn't just any mom. She's a big-time actress. Era rushes into the hospital room, still catching her breath. She must have come in a hurry because she's huffing like she just ran a marathon. Bayal is wrapped up in bed, looking every bit the exhausted actress she is. Era's worry is all over her face. I told you to eat before the shoot. But of course, like always, her advice had been ignored. She considers scolding Bayal but stops herself. Instead, she sighs and softens her tone. Sorry I wasn't here. The business trip, Bayal waves it off, staring at the ceiling. But Era does feel bad. Bayal's been pushing herself way too hard these past few weeks. This isn't even the first time she's fainted. It's a pattern now, and Era doesn't like it one bit. She sits on the edge of the bed, gently brushing Bayal's hair back. You need to slow down. Bayal finally looks at her, lips curling into the faintest smirk. You're one to talk. You don't eat when you're drowning in work either. Era raises a brow but doesn't argue. It's true. Difference is, she points out, I've never ended up in the hospital over it. Bayal shrugs like it's the same thing. Yet? Era's voice is quiet, laced with concern. She tells Bayal she's scared that if this keeps happening, something worse might follow. Bayal, ever the stubborn one, doesn't look half as worried. Fainting once in a while isn't a big deal, she murmurs. What does bother me is people seeing me like this. Era sighs, rubbing her temples. Course that's the concern. Not her health, not the fact that she's pushing herself to the brink, just her image. Till Era knows what to do. She leans in, her voice steady and warm. You're strong. You're talented. And you don't have to handle everything alone. She pats Bayal's head gently, smoothing down her hair. But right now, I just want you to rest, okay? No overthinking. No stress. Just focus on happy things, flowers, sunshine, rainbows. Bayal suddenly sits up, eyes narrowing. Did you just say I have no thoughts in my head? Era blinks, realizing too late that her words might have come across that way. Oh, no. She's certain she heard it loud and clear. Bayal folds her arms. And don't think I forgot about you being late. Era groans. I just got here. Baya smucks. Next time you better be on time and less, she trails off, her expression turning mischievous. Era stiffens. Unless what? Unless she want her back in here soon. Era pales. Bayal brings the bouquet to her nose and takes a deep breath. The scent is pristine, almost perfect. She smiles, feeling lighter already. Era watches her for a moment before casually dropping an idea. Let's go on vacation after you're done filming. Bayal blinks. A vacation? Just us girls, me, you, and Sol. Era leans back, arms crossed. Somewhere quiet, maybe abroad. Somewhere no one will recognize you. Bayal raises a brow. And since when do you take time off work? Era smirks. I work this hard so I can take time off when I actually want to. Bayal laughs, amused by the idea of Era, the notorious workaholic, taking a break. But as they start discussing locations, reality kicks in. Bayal's too famous. The struggle to pick a destination is real. Somewhere remote? But not too remote. She still wants Wi-Fi. Somewhere people don't care about celebrities? Then going to have to look for a place off the map maybe. Era watches as Bayal starts debating locations with actual enthusiasm. Just minutes ago she was lying in bed looking miserable. Now she's sitting up, grinning, fully engaged in their little trip planning session. That's what a good laugh and some quality time with loved ones can do. A new day breaks, and Harang steps outside, stretching her arms as she takes in the beauty of the morning sky. The sun is shining and everything feels right. It looks like it's going to be a good day. With a smile on her face, she takes in the fresh air, soaking in the peace of the moment. Then, from inside, Jaewoo calls out, "Lunch is ready." Our girl chuckles to herself, realizing she's slept in until noon. But that's not going to stop her. She hurries inside to join them, eager to eat. As she enters, the sound of little Sol's laughter fills the room. "Daddy made dumplings," she exclaims, clearly overjoyed. Harang can't help but smile as they tease Sol for making dumplings that, well, don't quite look like dumplings. It's all in good fun, and the energy in the room is light and happy. The time passes slowly, marked only by the steady filling of the ashtray with cigarette butts. A lot has happened during that time. Harang is settling in, getting along well with Jae-woo and Sol. The whole family dynamic is working. Little Sol, in particular, is growing fond of Harang. She genuinely enjoys having her around, and Harang has started to feel right at home. It's the little things like shared laughs, teasing moments, and that sense of warmth that slowly fill up the space between them. The days go by, and it's clear that the bond between the three is growing stronger with each passing moment. Sol waddles over to the ashtray, her tiny hands reaching out with curiosity. Before she can touch it, Jae-woo swoops in, grabbing it just in time. His voice is firm but gentle. "Don't touch that. It's nasty." The little girl tilts her head, frowning. "But you put those things in your mouth," the young man freezes. She got him. He turns away, pretending not to hear. Classic Jae-woo move. If he ignores it, maybe it didn't happen. But Sol isn't having it. She crosses her arms, watching as her dad makes a smooth escape indoors. Inside, our male lead stares at the ashtray, lost in thought. Maybe he should cut back. Maybe he should, Dad. Mom. Sol's voice snaps him back. He places the ashtray down, pushing away the thoughts for now, and goes to answer his daughter. Meanwhile, over at Harang's place, she's getting ready to head out. Her mom watches her, arms folded, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. "You've been spending a lot of time with that boyfriend of yours," she teases. "Is he at least helping you study?" Harang hesitates for a second, then shrugs. Yeah. Kinda." Her mom raises an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound very convincing." Our girl quickly grabs her bag, flashing an innocent smile. "Well, he's teaching me things." "Aha. That's what I thought." Our girl's mom beams, full of admiration. "That doctor boyfriend of yours is so kind, taking time out of his busy schedule just for you." Our female lead forces a smile, but inside she's sweating bullets. Yep. All lies. And the weight of them is getting heavier by the second. She lets out a nervous laugh. "Oh yeah, totally. But don't worry, Mom, I don't ask too much of him." Her mom nods approvingly. "That's good. He's got a lot on his plate." Our girl quickly seizes the opportunity to escape. "By the way, I'll be eating out tonight, so don't wait up for me." She waves, makes a run for it, and Mom shuts the door behind her. With a sigh, our girl leans against the railing outside. This fake boyfriend thing is becoming a real problem. How much longer can she keep it up? Her gaze drifts, and then she spots it, the ashtray. It's completely empty. Wait a minute. She's sure that thing was packed with cigarette butts before. Now it's practically sparkling. Her mind flashes back to when she gave it to him. Sure, it was nice that he actually used it, but was this really a good idea? She squints, feeling a sudden wave of regret. Maybe, just maybe, giving him the ashtray wasn't her brightest move. What if it's just encouraging him to keep smoking? Was she enabling him? She sighs. Night falls, and Jae-woo steps into the room to announce that dinner is almost ready. What he finds instead is a scene of pure laziness, Harang and little Sol sprawled out on the floor, fast asleep. He sighs. Did they even finish that anime they started? Probably not. Typical. His eyes drift to Harang. She's out cold. He pokes her cheek. Nothing. He pulls at it a little. Still nothing. This girl is unbelievable. How is she still asleep? Frustrated, he presses his thumb against her forehead, brushing aside the strands of hair covering her face. Still no reaction. He narrows his eyes. Wonders if she's dead. He leans in closer, studying her face. Nope, definitely alive. Also, annoyingly cute when she's sleeping. Not that he'd ever say that out loud. One last attempt. He pinches her ear and gives it a little twist. This time there's a twitch. Ah, so she's alive. That's a relief, though honestly, it wouldn't have hurt her to wake up like a normal person. Patience officially gone, he smacks her on the head. Our girl bolts upright, screaming in pain. "What did you do that for?" Jae-woo doesn't bother responding. Instead, He scoops up a very sleepy soul and casually tells Harang to join them for dinner. She groans, trying to get up, but immediately winces. Ah, great. Her back hurts. That's what she gets for passing out on the bare floor. As he walks out, she stiffens. The memory of his earlier attack still haunts her. That man had nearly given her a heart attack. Truth is, she'd been awake the whole time, just waiting for the right moment to open her eyes. And, well, she never found it. Harang is weird like that. Now she's blushing. Hard. Too bad Jae-woo doesn't notice. He's too busy thinking about food. Priorities. The next day, something unexpected happens. Jae-woo makes a big purchase, a brand new bed. Did the world just end? Is this a special occasion? He brushes it off. Just figured I needed a decent bed. Naturally, Sol and our female lead are the first to jump on it. Sol squeals in delight, bouncing around like a kid in a trampoline park. It's so comfy, our female lead, ever the detective, narrows her eyes at our guy. What's the real reason? You just suddenly decided to get a bed? He sighs, stretching dramatically. My back, okay? I'm not 20 anymore. I can't keep sleeping on the floor. My spine has rights. Not that it matters. Harang and Sol are too deep in their own conversation, completely ignoring his tragic backstory. He glares at them. Wow. Glad you guys care. Jae-woo clears his throat, determined to reclaim his presence in the room. So? What do you think of the bed? Harang, still lying comfortably, lazily stretches. It's great. I mean, it's brand new. I wasn't expecting it to be terrible. Good, he says, nodding like he just finished a hard day's work. As long as it's comfortable. Harang and Sol step into the house, shaking off the day at school. The little girl, ever the planner, clings to Harang's hand. Next time you're here, we're watching that anime together, she declares with utmost seriousness. Harang chuckles. Of course. I wouldn't dare watch ahead. The little girl narrows her eyes, sensing possible betrayal. No spoilers. Promise? Promise. Satisfied, Sol nods and heads off to her room, leaving the two adults alone. And just like that, the air shifts. Heavy silence. Neither of them says a word. They turn away from each other, both clearly having thoughts but no clue how to say them out loud. Eventually, they head into the bedroom. Our male lead busies himself, straightening the covers on the new bed, patting it down like it's some prized possession. Harang watches him, arms crossed. It's kinda sad Sol has to leave soon, she muses. Especially after you just got this new bed for her. Jae-woo doesn't look up. I got it for myself. Right, Harang says, dragging out the word. 'Cause sleeping on the floor is bad for your back. She smirks, fully enjoying the opportunity to mock him. Jae-woo shoots her a look but doesn't argue. With her mission complete, Harang turns to leave, except she doesn't get very far. A firm hand grabs her wrist, stopping her in her tracks. Jae-woo tightens his grip on her wrist just slightly, enough to make her pause. He clears his throat, almost hesitant. Want to stay back and watch a movie with me? Harang tilts her head. What movie? He gives her a pointed look. He wants her to remember. The one they started last time but didn't finish. Harang squints at him. We watched a movie together? She looks genuinely puzzled. Are you sure you're not confusing me with someone else? Jae-woo exhales, shaking his head. It was the day they slept together for the first time. It all comes rushing back and she lets out a small laugh. Right. We did watch something, didn't we? He just waits, arms crossed, silently demanding her decision. Our female lead stretches her arms lazily. Well, now I'm actually curious to see how it ends. That's all he needs to hear. They settle in, side by side on the bed, eyes locked on the PC screen as the movie plays. The room falls into an almost eerie silence, neither of them speaking. The only sounds come from the film. Someone should probably say something. But who's going to break first? Harang finally decides to break the silence. As soon as she speaks, Jae-woo flinches ever so slightly, like he wasn't expecting her voice to cut through the quiet. She takes a breath. Listen, I just wanted to say some things. He glances at her. Express yourself freely. She hesitates for a second, then pushes forward. I wanted to apologize for before. His brows furrow. Before? Yeah. Like way before. The first day we met. Jae-woo blinks. Okay, and what exactly are you apologizing for? She exhales dramatically. Well, let's see. I called you a sex-crazed pervert within 5 minutes of meeting you. Then I got drunk and, let's just say I made some questionable moves. Now it's his turn to blink. Ha! Harang's face turns red. This is way more embarrassing to say out loud than she thought. But she pushes through. I just realized I never actually said sorry for any of that. Our guy leans back, arms crossed. And this is suddenly important to you now because? Because it just hit me, she says, exasperated. And in my defense, I only acted that way because I thought you were some sketchy creep. He scoffs, about to cut in, but she raises a hand and glares. Let me finish. He shuts his mouth. Looks like she's got a lot more to say. Jae-woo actually listens this time, his eyes locked on her as she speaks. Harang finds it a little unnerving, but she pushes through. That day was weird, she admits. I put you in such an awkward position. It was pouring and you were just trying to help. I never really thanked you for that. Our guy stays quiet, but his expression shifts ever so slightly, like he's genuinely taking in every word. And you never brought it up again, so I kind of assumed you forgot about it. But still, I should have apologized sooner. I was a mess. I cried, threw a whole tantrum, and you just dealt with it. She pauses, biting her lip. But the more time I spend with you in Seoul, the more I realize I have no idea what I'm even doing with my life. He raises a brow. That's dramatic. She huffs. No, really. I've just been going wherever my mom tells me to go, studying whatever she picks. I didn't even choose my own career path. His gaze softens a little, but he doesn't say anything. Harang lets out a breath. I think I've just been coasting through life. And for once, Jae-woo doesn't make a joke. Jae-woo, taking care of Seoul with so much love and patience, does something weird to Harang. She can't even put it into words. It makes her think, really think. What does it look like when someone dedicates their entire life to the people they love? Well, if she had to picture it, Seoul's face would come to mind first. That little girl is proof that love can shape a person. And Jae-woo? Even with his messy hair, tired eyes, and grumpy attitude, he still carries that same love in his gaze. That unwavering, steady kind of love. Kind that never wavers, no matter what. Our female lead watches the two of them, and for a moment something sinks in. She doesn't fit into their world. Their love is whole, self-sufficient, complete. There's no space left. No vacancy sign hanging on Jae-woo's heart. Before she can dwell on it, she smacks herself. Hard. Our guy blinks. What? She clears her throat, turning away. Nothing. Just a mosquito. She internally screams. What was she even thinking? Saying all of that out loud? She's officially lost her mind. Jae-woo grabs her hand and Harang flinches. She blurts out that she's starting to feel a little tipsy. Total lie, but it's the best excuse she can come up with. He doesn't let it slide. Repeat what you just said. She blinks. Which part, though? She's been talking non-stop for the past few minutes. She starts repeating random bits until she lands on the one that makes his eyes narrow. Oh, that one. The part where she said he didn't have a care in the world. Harang sighs. I literally just apologized for that a second ago. Why do you want me to say it again? Jae-woo leans back, watching her. He's not mad. Just surprised. She actually remembers. The room goes quiet for a few awkward seconds before she bolts up. Beer. I need beer. Classic escape move. But he's faster. Before she can make a run for it, he intercepts her, and just like that, they're on the bed. Now, he's looking at her with this curious, unreadable expression. How long? Harang blinks. How long what? He tilts his head. How long have you remembered everything from that night? Oh. Busted. She gulps. He's onto her. Has she been pretending this whole time? If she says yes, she's in trouble. If she says no, she's still in trouble. Fantastic. Harang admits she only remembered everything recently. Not like she was going to run up to him and announce it with a grand speech. Hey, guess what? I finally remember everything from my drunken disaster night. Yeah, that would have been weird. Jae-woo doesn't seem surprised. Not a big deal, right? She shrugs. I mean, is it? He leans in slightly. I don't need to remind you how your first time here went. Oh boy. Here we go. He brings up the little unfinished business from back then. Apparently, they gave it a shot once but didn't see it through. And according to him, she's to blame. Harang's face twists. Blame? For what? Before she can process, he goes on. But now that you remember, nothing's stopping us from taking it all the way. Oh. She swears the air just got 10 degrees hotter. He's got this smug, knowing look, like some mastermind who's been scheming in the shadows. And worse? He actually brings up the new bed. Even better this time, your back won't hurt anymore. Harang gasps, dramatically clutching her chest. Hold on. Are you saying you bought this bed just for this? Silence. Not a single word from him. Jae-woo's lack of response says it all, but before she can demand a proper answer, he ambushes her, his lips crashing onto hers. Question? Erased. Her brain? Malfunctioning. She twitches, practically vibrating on the spot. Oh, things are about to get very interesting. Jae-woo and Harang kiss, the kind of kiss that could probably melt ice caps. His hands find her zipper, and just as he starts to pull it down, she stiffens and pushes him off. They pause. She turns away, avoiding his gaze like he's the sun and she forgot her sunglasses. What was that? She asks, her voice just a little too high-pitched. He blinks. What was what? She whips her head around. That! Jae-woo tilts his head, playing innocent. It was just a kiss. Yeah, she's not buying that. She narrows her eyes, arms crossed. He knows what she means. He squints back, saying absolutely nothing, which honestly says everything. Instead, he tugs at her zipper again, changing the subject. He asks about her jacket, says it's weird. She scoffs. He knows it quite well and he states it all, she never wears a bra. Always in a tight t-shirt. Shorts that might as well be a second skin. She dresses like her entire closet is a size too small. Our girl gasps, scandalized. Our male lead raises an eyebrow. His observation skills? Unfortunately on point tonight. They get intimate. Meanwhile, Seoul, Jae-woo and Harang's next adventure takes place in a battlefield far more intense, an arcade. Seoul bounces excitedly as they face a notoriously difficult game. She cheers for Harang like she's the champion of the world. Jae-woo reminds them that this game isn't about winning, it's about teamwork. Harang squints at him like he just suggested pineapple belongs on pizza. She claims he's just making excuses because he's scared to lose. Seoul gasps dramatically before jumping back into her role as #1 cheerleader. The game begins, lights flashing, sound effects blaring. Harang is laser-focused, hands flying over the controls like she's training for the World Championships. Seoul yells words of encouragement that don't entirely make sense but are enthusiastic nonetheless. Jae-woo, ever the responsible one, tries to keep the team on track. His efforts are ignored. Harang wins. She celebrates like she's just secured her legacy in arcade history. Jae-woo sighs and heads off to get more coins, muttering something about being trapped with two competitive maniacs. The machine, he pauses. Nearby, a family is gathered, their laughter carrying over the beeping and jingling of the arcade. The family nearby is enjoying their time. Dad takes his shot at the bowling alley, the ball rolling down the lane with the confidence of someone who may or may not get a strike. Their son tugs at his mom's sleeve, begging for popcorn even though they have a movie to catch in 5 minutes. It's a sweet, familiar scene. Jae-woo watches them for a moment, his thoughts unreadable. A small voice pulls him from his daze. A little boy stands beside him, hands clasped politely, waiting his turn. He asks if he can use the machine once Jae-woo is done. Kids' manners are impressive, rare even. Jae-woo nods, stepping aside as soon as he's finished, though he can't help but glance back at the family once more. Meanwhile, back at the game console, Harang and Sol are left to their own devices, dangerous for anyone who values peace and quiet. Sol, still beaming from their victory, starts an interesting conversation. She looks up at Harang with wide, admiring eyes and declares that she's a real-life superhero. The first mommy to ever beat her dad. Harang grins, basking in the praise like a cat in the sun. Course she's amazing. The best. A legend in the making. Sol eats it up, clearly thrilled to have such a powerful mommy. It's obvious she loves superheroes, so Harang leans in, curiosity piqued. What's your favorite thing about superheroes? She asks. Sol's eyes sparkle, ready to launch into an enthusiastic explanation. Sol tugs at Harang's sleeve, her expression serious. Mommy Harang, can you keep a secret? Harang raises a brow, intrigued. There's no secret too big for me, she assures, leaning in. This should be interesting. Sol glances around, then lowers her voice like she's about to share classified information. It's super fun when I play with my superhero mommies, she says, voice full of excitement. But when it's just me and Daddy, sometimes he looks bored. Harang blinks. Bored? Yeah. Sol nods solemnly. Even when he's with me or my superhero mommies, he looks disoriented, sad, tired. Harang is stunned. What is this kid getting at? Sol, small but perceptive, continues, pointing out something even more surprising. Her daddy always looks happy when he's with her. Our girl stares at her, caught off guard. What? Sol beams, completely sure of her next words. So, I want you to be my new mommy. Because mommy is a real superhero. Harang chokes on air. Out of all the things this kid could have said. Hold on. What exactly is your definition of a hero? In her mind, heroes are supposed to be insanely powerful, flying around, saving the world, maybe wearing a cape. She's cool, sure, but she definitely doesn't fit that description. Sol, however, looks at her like she's already won the title. Sol's eyes shine with certainty. Superheroes always come to the rescue, she explains. They show up. That's what makes them extra special. No matter how dangerous or difficult things get, they help and save those in need. Harang stays silent. That's actually kind of deep. Sol leans in, her little hands cupping around her mouth like she's sharing top-secret intel. Mommy Harang, she whispers, I want you to save Daddy and be his superhero. Harang stares. This kid is too sweet for her own good. And what exactly are you offering for this humble service? She teases. Sol grins and leans in again, whispering her grand offer. If you promise to be Daddy's protector, I'll be your superhero. Harang can't help but smile. That's a big responsibility, she murmurs, but she accepts. Her words come out softer than expected. Something feels off. She blinks, suddenly realizing her exhaustion. Had she been babbling this entire time? Right, she'd passed out earlier. A deep voice cuts through the haze. What did you just say? Ju leans closer, his brows slightly furrowed. He must have heard her mumbling but not caught the words. Harang barely processes it. Her eyelids feel heavier. Our girl slowly drifts back to consciousness, mumbling incoherent words. Everything feels hazy. Then, suddenly, she realizes Jae-woo is way too close. Her eyes snap open. She jerks upright in alarm, only to crash her forehead straight into his. A loud thud echoes. Our guy winces, rubbing his forehead. Just so we're clear, I wasn't doing anything weird, he states immediately. I came closer because you were mumbling in your sleep. Thought you were having a bad dream, our girl isn't buying it. You didn't have to hover over me like that, she shoots back, still holding her head. Jae-woo sighs, choosing not to argue. Instead, he turns to her, voice calmer. Are you all right? She scratches her head, looking completely lost. Is she all right? Who knows? Jae-woo gets up. I made some hangover soup, he informs her. At that moment, Sol's words from earlier play in Harang's mind. Daddy always looks happy when he's with Mommy Harang. Her eyes flick to Jae-woo. How true is that? Before she can figure it out, he steps toward the door, pausing just long enough to throw in one last comment. Maybe watch your drinking. I don't want you passing out every time you come over. Harang bolts upright. She yells after him. Jaewoo, already walking away, doesn't even turn back. Aha! She glares. Unbelievable. Harang opens her mouth to fire back, but the words die in her throat the moment she realizes she's naked under these sheets. Her face heats up instantly. Oh. Confrontation is the last thing she wants right now. Fine, whatever, she mutters, forcing agreement just to make him leave faster. The second he's out the door, she exhales sharply. Crisis averted. She hurriedly throws on some clothes and heads to the dining area. As she walks in, she scratches her head, playing it cool. Yesterday's kind of fuzzy, she claims, her voice casual. The young man doesn't miss a beat. I can remind you. Her soul nearly leaves her body. No thanks, she blurts out a little too fast. Why reject the offer? Oh, because she remembers everything. Every single detail. And it's very intense. Her heart pounds as flashes of last night race through her mind. Nope. Nope. Can't think about it. Without another word, she suddenly yells out, "Where's the hangover soup?" The dramatic shift makes Jaewoo raise a brow, but she doesn't care. All this noise? This is called distraction. If she acts chaotic enough, maybe, just maybe, she can drown out the sheer embarrassment flooding her system. Because right now, she can't even look him in the eye. Jaewoo places the bowl of soup on the table, and Harang mutters a quick thanks before digging in. She keeps her head down, focusing on her meal like it's the most interesting thing in the world. But then she pauses. What's wrong with me? Why is she acting like some shy schoolgirl? They were both involved last night, yet she's the only one sitting here embarrassed for no reason. That's ridiculous. She needs to man up. With newfound determination, she lifts her head to meet his gaze. Their eyes lock. She holds it, 1 second, 2, then immediately looks away and chokes on nothing. Jaewoo watches her, unimpressed. You didn't have to do all that just to tell me my soup tastes bad. Harang wipes her lips and shoots him a look. I freaked out because you were staring, she clarifies. She changes the subject, clearing her throat. Why aren't you eating? I already ate. Well, that was quick. But there's a bigger issue. Harang narrows her eyes at him. Why are you looking at me like that? Our guy blinks, deadpan. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, he's so lying. She pushes for an answer. You are looking at me weird. I'm not. You are. Jaewoo doesn't budge. Harang sighs dramatically, stabbing her spoon into the soup. I'm just trying to eat, but you're staring at an uncomfortable level. Like you've got something to say. He leans back, expression unreadable. I've got nothing to say. Harang squints, unconvinced. Either he really doesn't have anything to say or he just won't say it. Jaewoo finds this odd. It's unlike him to just stare at someone. Why is he doing it now? Our girl, meanwhile, sits in deep contemplation. Does he like me? Her mind goes into full conspiracy mode. Could he? Is it possible? Questions flood her heart at an alarming rate. She sneaks a glance at him. Still sitting there. Still watching. What else could it be? Her face warms up. Truly, he must be completely idle to just sit there and watch her eat. Her cheeks turn visibly red. And then the little girl's words echo in her head again. Daddy always looks happy when he's with Mommy Harang. Jaewoo, unaware of the crisis unfolding in her brain, casually asks, So, how's the hangover soup? Silence. He raises a brow. Harang. No response. She's completely gone, drowning in a sea of thoughts. The night's events flash in her mind. Soul's words from her dream. The memories. The fact that he bought a whole new bed frame and mattress. Our guy watches her, a little baffled. He asks again, explaining that he's thinking of making this soup the next time Soul comes over. He needs a second opinion before deciding. Till nothing. She hears absolutely none of it. Too lost in her own world, spiraling deeper into her own thoughts. Jaewoo's patience starts wearing thin. The silence is dragging on way too long. Is she seriously just going to ignore him? Meanwhile, Harang's thoughts are going off the rails. Somehow, she's convinced herself that Jaewoo is just a man nervously waiting for her approval, afraid she won't like his cooking. That's what she's come up with. Absolutely wild. She finally snaps out of it. Your cooking is good, she blurts out. The soup's nice, so you really don't have to keep asking. He exhales a quiet breath of relief. Our male lead watches him and, oh no, he looks cute right now. Panic mode activated. She slumps in her seat, burying her face in her hands. Get a grip. This is Jae-woo she's thinking about. Not exactly the kind of guy to fall head over heels for. While she's lost in self-scolding, she doesn't notice him moving closer. Then, out of nowhere, he lifts her chin with his fingers. She stiffens, her entire body locking up. You're getting your hair in the soup, Jae-woo states matter-of-factly. She blinks. Oh, right. Before she can react, he taps her back lightly and moves behind her. You act like a little kid, he mutters. Eat your food and keep your head still. And then, he starts tying her hair for her. Our female lead's heart leaps in her chest. She's so tense she might actually explode, but somehow she manages to say, You really didn't have to do that. I'm not handicapped. Our male lead doesn't even respond. Just ties her hair neatly like it's no big deal. Meanwhile, Harang? Yeah, she's struggling. Ju raises a brow. Why are you blushing? Blushing now after everything they did in bed last night? That's crazy. He smirks. Harang zones out. He's right. Last night was wild, and yet here she is, spiraling over him, tying her hair. Her priorities are completely out of order. As she stirs her soup absent-mindedly, questions pile up in her heart. What are they now? Are they dating? Or was it just a one-time thing? Our guy glances at his phone. Era and Bayal should have landed by now. Harang blinks, pulled from her thoughts. He pockets his phone and casually adds, The little girl won't be coming over for a while since her moms took her on vacation. Something about that makes our girl feel odd. A little emptier than she expected. And then, she just blurts it out. Are we in a relationship? Jae-woo stops. Silence. Our girl's heart slams against her ribs. That's it. She said it. No taking it back now. What's it gonna be? Will he reject her? Our male lead squints, clearly not understanding Harang's question. He assumes she's asking about Sol's mother's relationship and reminds her that he's already told her about it before. Era and Bayal are married, though technically there wasn't a wedding. More like a we're together now, deal with it situation. Our girl, determined to get her actual question across, tries again, but Jae-woo cuts her off. He's suddenly distracted, mumbling about Era being the one to propose, if there was even a proposal at all. Wait, when did those two even start dating? He's not sure anymore. He acts like he's about to uncover some great mystery, and now Harang's completely hooked. She was asking something else, wasn't she? Who knows? That's old news. Right now, she needs to hear every detail about Sol's mother's. Jae-woo shrugs, struggling to recall the timeline. It's been years. Maybe decades. Maybe centuries. Who's counting? Harang, that's who. She fires off questions like a detective solving the case of, when did Era and Bayal become a thing? Her original question? Gone. Forever lost in the depths of her new obsession. Jae-woo, realizing there's no escaping now, sighs and gives in. If she wants the full story, he's got it. Buckle up. It's a long ride. Trip down memory lane begins. Bayal and her minions are in their usual spot, discussing the most random things like whether fish get thirsty or if teachers have secret lives outside of school. Spirits are high, laughter is plenty. Then, out of nowhere, Era walks up to their table and drops a juice box in front of Bayal like some kind of cryptic offering. The entire crew freezes. Silence. Suspicion. A juice box? From Era? Class weirdo? The group exchanges looks, unspoken theories already forming. Someone finally asks the million-dollar question, when did Bayal and her become friends? Bayal blinks, processes, then nods slowly. Yeah, we're friends. It's a lie. Well, technically not a lie, but she's mostly saying it to shut them up. This, of course, does not shut them up. If anything, the shock levels in the group skyrocket. Someone immediately takes it upon themselves to give Bayal a reality check. Era? Friends with anyone? The same Era who's a walking contradiction, both a loner and the loudest person in the room? The girl who spends 90% of her day sleeping and the other 10% cussing people out? That Era? Then, the girl with the hair curler chimes in, claiming she had a weird encounter with Era in the restroom once. Naturally, this derails the entire conversation. The group, now on high alert, bombards her with questions. Which restroom? Details. They need details. Curler Girl doesn't disappoint. She pinpoints the exact location and spills the real tea. She's certain someone was puking in there that day, but the weirdo stopped her from going inside. Suspicious. Very suspicious. As the group continues piecing together their new favorite conspiracy, Bayal remains quiet, her mind elsewhere. Then, as the restroom story unfolds, her eyes widen in shock. Oh. Oh no. Later that day, Era grabs her book from her desk and spots a tiny note underneath. A secret message? A threat? A grocery list someone misplaced? She unfolds it and reads the request. Meet me at the playground after school. Curious but mostly bored, she goes. And there, waiting for her, is none other than Bayal. Two lock eyes. It's a classic face-off, like a showdown but with less dramatic music and more teenage awkwardness. Era tilts her head. So, did you like the soy milk I gave you earlier? Priorities. Bayal sighs. That's not why we're here. She's serious, cutting straight to the point. Does she really stop other girls from entering the restroom when Bayal is throwing up? Era raises a brow and affirms it. No hesitation. No explanation. Just a simple confirmation, like she's admitting to a completely normal habit, such as tying her shoelaces or breathing. Bayal frowns. What's this girl's endgame? She believed the weirdo hates her. And just like that, Era drops a bomb. She confesses. Her feelings, laid out in the open, simple and unfiltered. Bayal short-circuits. Her brain throws error messages. What? The words hit her like a truck. She steps back, blinking rapidly, hands moving in random directions as if that'll help reboot her system. She's into dating girls. Era stares at her. Then shrugs. Cool. She never said anything about dating. Bayal blinks. Oh. Her brain stutters again. Era folds her arms. Seems she didn't consider it a chance she actually liked her as just a friend. Bayal has never been more confused in her life. Bayal instantly regrets everything. Her brain replays the last few seconds like a broken record, and the more she thinks about it, the worse it gets. She starts fidgeting, suddenly very interested in her shoes. She mumbles an apology, first for jumping to conclusions, then for, hitting Era before. Small things. The weirdo, as always, is completely unbothered. She steps closer, looking at her crush straight in the eye. You weren't wrong, though. Bayal barely has time to process that sentence before Era follows up with the most casual, life-ruining statement ever. Be my girlfriend. Cue internal screaming. Bayal's heart skips a beat, her soul momentarily leaves her body, and she panics so hard she almost trips over air. She waves her hands, face heating up. I'm just gonna pretend I never heard that, our female lead gasps, fully invested. Our male lead, the storyteller, takes his time before continuing, letting the tension hang. Harang leans in. She needs to know what happens next. Jaewoo grins. Era? Yeah, she didn't give up. Era goes all in. Every day in class, a soy milk juice box magically appears on Bayal's table. The first time? Confusing. The second time? Suspicious. The third? Annoying. Bayal finally snaps, turning to Era. What's with the soy milk? Era shrugs like she didn't just execute the most persistent romantic pursuit of all time. Did some research, she says. Dairy's not great for dieting, and she figured her crush wouldn't want something sugary, so soy milk was the next best thing. Bayal blinks. Processing. Processing. Bayal lets out the longest sigh known to mankind. She crosses her arms, shaking her head. This is starting to look weird. She says it like she's exhausted, but really she's this close to losing her mind. One more time, she rejects Era. It's not happening, she mutters. I have my reasons. And she does. She can't date this weirdo. Not because she doesn't like her, but because of what people would say. She has a future to think about, a career to build, and this would change everything. It's a risk she's not willing to take. Besides, it's not like Era plans to take care of her for the rest of her life or anything. Era, completely unfazed, stares at her with a blank face and says, "I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." Her crush nearly chokes on air. Is she serious? She can't be serious. That's crazy. You do realize being responsible for someone else isn't a joke, right? Bayal says, exasperated. You're just saying stuff. Era, still unreadable, tilts her head. So, am I being rejected because you don't like me, or crush freezes? Because from what you've been saying this whole time, Era continues, her voice calm but steady, it sounds like you do like me. You're just scared people will find out. Her crush's breath catches. Era steps closer, right into Bayal's space, staring her dead in the eyes. Do you hate me? She asks, voice calm but firm. Is that what's keeping us apart? Bayal tenses. If you do, Era continues, I'll leave you alone. Silence. Her crush doesn't answer. She should just say yes and be done with it, but the words refuse to come out. Instead, she blurts out something completely different. She asks if Era has even been in a relationship with another girl before. To her crush, it's like the concept is unthinkable, like the idea of Era liking someone, really liking someone, makes no sense. But Era doesn't bother answering. Instead, she leans in, closes the distance, and shuts Bayal up with a kiss. And that's how it all began. That's their origin story. Enjoying this story so far? Comment part 4 if you want to see the next part. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.